Chapter 439. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, Sword Cultivators of the Divine, thought true immortal realm, were formidable, their sword intent stirring the entire world, but to harbor illusions to obstruct the Hong Sword Heaven was undeniably a fool's dream. Gu An's gaze returned to the Hong Sword Heaven, where continuous figures flew out of the reincarnation vortex, each emitting a formidable sword intent, led by two free immortals. These people's faces were unfamiliar to Guan, never having been seen in Xianxia's memories. However, he was certain that the Hong Sword Heaven was founded by Xianxia's disciple, Yang Pingan. Previously, the Hong Sword Heaven had not appeared, but now it did. Could it be because its followers were being taught the Holy Heart Sword Tao? Guan felt this was only part of the reason. Their imposing manner suggested they harbored designs on the great heavenly spirit land. After a brief negotiation, the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty commenced their siege on the Hong Sword Heaven, the battle fierce. Longqing could not view the fight from outer heaven, but he was lost in boundless imagination. The Supreme Sect, disturbed by the Immortal Dynasty's sword intent, debated where this sword intent originated. After watching for a while, Guan turned and left, with Longqing quickly following, inquiring about the situation in outer heaven. Guan did not conceal the facts, briefly describing the battle in outer heaven. Longqing listened excitedly, his longing for the immortal path realm intensifying. Upon returning to Medicine Valley, Longqing hurried to his room to meditate, determined to make his master proud and to become a powerful figure who could stir the winds and clouds of the world. Guan returned to his room, untroubled by the Hong Sword Heaven bringing calamity, as this group was not potent enough to threaten the great heavenly spirit land. Sitting at his desk, Guan turned to look out the window, his thoughts drifting to distant memories. There on that island, only Yang Pingan accompanied him, always challenging him. Thinking of it, he felt quite nostalgic. Seeing the robust chi fortune of the Hong Sword Heaven, it was clear that a lengthy time had passed since Yang Pingan had established it. How strong was Yang Pingan now? Guan looked forward to finding out, though he also felt a sense of urgency. Times had changed, and it was essential to guard against others. Guessing Yang Pingan's intentions in seeking the Holy Heart Sword Tao was challenging. Setting aside Yang Pingan, he also had to consider the Annihilation God Emperor as a hypothetical enemy, striving to grow stronger. Moreover, the depths of the universe still had the Heavenly Spirit God as an obstacle. What a long and heavy responsibility. With these thoughts in mind, Guan took out the latest volume of the Supreme Secret Records and began to consolidate his Taoist heart. The Supreme Secret Records were still being written, but were no longer sold in the market. Only Guan had access, as a form of repayment from Shenzhen. At dawn, the waves crashed against the shore. On the cliff, streams of sword chi appeared out of nowhere, circling and coiling to form a vortex that rapidly expanded, followed by a figure stepping out from it, landing on the cliff. Bathed in sunlight, this was a man in black armor and a white cloak, his long hair tied under a white jade crown, and a treasure sword hanging at his waist. His handsome face emanated a commanding arrogance. After landing, he looked around. The sword chi vortex behind him quickly contracted. After looking around, he smiled, then raised his right hand, sword chi emerging in his palm to condense into a silver mirror, the mirror reflecting a gentle woman. Sword Lord, the fate of the great heavenly spirit land is in chaos. It is for this reason that I could help you infiltrate it, but this also implies unpredictable dangers. You must be very careful, the woman in the mirror spoke, her face filled with worry. The man with the mirror hailed from Da Hong Sword Heaven, revered as Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch. Hearing the woman's words, Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, responded dismissively. The great heavenly spirit land is not what it used to be. After that great battle, it's just a fragment of the great heavenly spirit land now. No one can threaten me, rest assured. The woman in the mirror frowned, then asked, Can you tell me now why you want to infiltrate the great heavenly spirit land? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, looked into the distance and said, The Holy Heart Sword Tao has reappeared. Those above wish to find the reincarnation or inheritor of the Sword Tao Saint ancestor to serve him, but I disagree. I will defeat him and prove that the Hong Sword Heaven does not need to pursue the Holy Heart Sword Tao. I will create an even stronger Sword Tao. Upon hearing this, the woman in the mirror's expression drastically changed, just about to speak when Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, crushed the silver mirror, dissipating it into sword chi. He then identified a direction, stepped forward, transforming into a streak of sword light soaring toward the end of heaven and sea, leaving behind a trail of sword chi mirages, like a mirage hanging above the vast ocean. At the same time, North Sea Mountain, Guan, wearing a mask, sat on the eaves reading a book, his divine thought locked onto Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch. The ninth layer of the free immortal realm was intensely replete with the cause and effect of reincarnation. It was estimated that the reincarnation tribulation was about to end, only half a step away from the Tao Fruit realm. When the other party descended onto the great heavenly spirit land, Guan had detected him immediately and also heard what he had said. He didn't consider Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, a threat. Rather, the implications behind the words of the Sword Monarch gave him pause. Did Da Hong, Sword Heaven, intend to serve the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Tao? Guan remembered that although Xianxia had imparted the Holy Heart Sword Tao to Yang Pingan at the time showed no surprise but instead smiled, saying his own Sword Tao was not inferior to the Holy Heart Sword Tao. At that time, Xianxia's Holy Heart Sword Tao was merely rudimentary, nowhere near as strong as it was when contending with the heavenly spirit god, and countless years had passed since then, with the Holy Heart Sword Tao having reached unimaginable levels through the Sword Tao River. Could it be that Yang Pingan had faced setbacks in his Sword Tao and come to believe his own was inferior to the Holy Heart Sword Tao? Guan speculated about what might have transpired after Xianxia's death to make the Hong Sword Heaven so highly esteem the Holy Heart Sword Tao. As for Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, seeking to trouble him, he wasn't too concerned. What waves could a mere free immortal stir up? If he dared to act against him, Guan wouldn't hesitate due to past feelings. He would kill, if necessary. He wasn't Xianxia. He didn't confine his actions within so many strictures. In the courtyard, Sage Xianmiao, holding a secret book, looked up at Guan and anxiously said, "Mountain God, this secret book is too profound. I can't understand it at all." Back at Three Pure Ones Mountain, he had been considered a prodigy, able to grasp any Taoist sorcery with just a glance. Yet, when faced with the secret book bestowed by the mountain god, he couldn't comprehend it at all. Guan nonchalantly replied, "If it were that easy to fathom, becoming an immortal wouldn't be so difficult." Centuries had passed, and Sage Xianmiao had already achieved the mystic heart realm cultivator status. His talent was not lacking. It was just that Guan hadn't prioritized nurturing him. Upon hearing this, Sage Xianmiao could only manage an awkward smile and continue to delve into the secret book in his hands. Boom! A deafening boom suddenly came from the sky, startling Sage Xianmiao to look up and see a huge ball of light appearing and rapidly expanding, with strong wind soon descending upon the mountains and forests. Sage Xianmiao quickly stood up, frowning deeply. With the mountain god still there, he was not panicked. Mountain god, a sword intent ascended to the heavens a few months ago, and now this bizarre phenomenon has occurred. What could be the reason? Sage Xianmiao asked, turning to Guan as the tempest tousled his long hair. Guan answered, "Obviously, someone is fighting." Hearing this, Sage Xianmiao fell into silence. Though he was secluded from the world, people still passed by this place, allowing him to keep abreast of the major happenings overseas, which was currently in the midst of rare chaos. He wanted to ask the mountain god why he didn't put an end to such turbulent times, but feared it would be presumptuous. He always believed that the mountain god was a true immortal, different from those powerful cultivators and demons. But he figured that the mountain god had his own considerations. Perhaps everything had its own natural laws of evolution, and even immortals could not disrupt them. Guan stood up and tucked the book into his chest, looking down at sage Xianxia. Cultivate well. These days are long, and when you are strong enough, I can let you leave the mountain to alleviate suffering. As his words fell, he vanished into thin air from the eaves. Sage Xianxia, rather than being ecstatic, looked down at the secret book in his hands, his eyes revealing a glimmer of hope. Above the boundless mountains and rivers, dust swirled as Hao stood proudly in the air. His knight's robe fluttered wildly. He looked downward, with 9 bright suns floating behind him tracing circular paths, the firelight illuminating his form, making him look like a deity. From all directions, cultivators and demons watched the battle. They stood outside the formation, each gaze towards Hao filled with disbelief. Those from the Supreme Sect watched with surging emotions, excited beyond measure. Wuxia watched Hao from afar, his eyes unable to hide his stunned expression as he subconsciously looked at his own right fist. Hao could overpower a loose immortal, but could his fist defeat a Nirvana realm cultivator? At this moment, he truly felt the vast disparity between himself and Hao, as if it were the difference between an immortal and immortal. Chapter 440, The Origin of Sword. Venerable Fu Dao, it seems I have one. Hao's voice resonated between heaven and earth, silencing all the noise, allowing sect from all directions to feel his pride. A Nirvana victor over a loose immortal. Such a record was a marvel and shock throughout ancient and modern times. Looking at the peerless Hao, Wuxia felt that he still shouldn't test him. If Hao learned that Guan was impersonating his master, Guan would probably be in big trouble. Such a domineering divine flame. The flame primordial treasure body is truly powerful. How do I feel that he is even stronger than the treasure body? Our vast energy Taoist sect also has geniuses with treasure bodies, but none as dominant as him. His divine skills just now were no small matter. He could actually mobilize the heaven and earth rules, which is also why he was able to defeat the loose immortal. No wonder the immortal dynasty could recruit him. Such talent truly surpasses the immortal spirit. Cultivators from all sects talked amongst themselves, but Hao did not pay attention. He raised his right hand, threw an elixir, and it plummeted into the rolling dust below. Immediately after, he turned and flew in a certain direction. Great cultivators, led by the Supreme Sect, immediately ordered a pursuit of Hao. Wuxia, having no time to ponder, hurriedly caught up with the group. Half an hour later, in the mountains and fields, Hao and the high-ranking members of the Supreme Sect stood beside a stream, talking and laughing heartily, while Wuxia stood not far away, envying the scene before him. Without Hao, he would be the one everyone looked up to, the future of the Supreme Sect, but with Hao present, he was no different from the other ordinary disciples. No one paid him any attention anymore. Vice Sect leader Xianxia looked at Hao and said with a smile, "We are most comforted by your achievement today. You carry the hope for the rise of the Supreme Sect. Even when you're away, the disciples in the sect will inquire about your whereabouts. You have become the hope that the juniors chase." Hearing this, Hao smiled even more, and faced with such words, he chose to be humble. He had quite a fondness for the Supreme Sect, as in the early stage of his immortal cultivation life, the Supreme Sect had given him considerable help. Most importantly, his master and junior sister were in the Supreme Sect, and just by that fact alone, it was impossible for him to leave the Supreme Sect. Just as they were exchanging pleasantries, an immense sword intent descended, making everyone feel as if their throats were being choked, cutting off all speech. Hao looked up, his eyebrows furrowed, a wariness apparent in his eyes. A whooshing sound descended from the sky. Clang! A sword fell from the sky, landing in front of Hao. Stones shattered and flew off, and the cultivators from the Supreme Sect retreated in shock, while Hao remained as steady as Mount Tai, unmoved. The sword that was planted in the ground trembled nonstop, the blade vibrating to form afterimages. Before the cultivators of the Supreme Sect could speak, a figure descended from the sky, landing precisely on the hilt of the sword. It was Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch. And Hao looked up at Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch before him, his eyes filled with confusion, but no fear. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, ignored everyone else, his gaze fixed on Hao, burning with intensity as if he were looking at a rare treasure. Who are you? What do you want? The highest cultivation level elder of the Supreme Sect asked in a deep voice, clutching the Dharma treasure in his hand, clearly very nervous. Just one glance at Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, was enough for everyone present to realize that they were no match for him. Boy, what's your name? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, stared at Hao and coldly asked, the breeze blowing his robe as he stood on the hilt, emanating an overwhelming pressure. And Hao responded, and Hao, do you have a matter to attend to, Daoist friend? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's mouth curved upwards. I am Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch. Your life grid is quite decent. No matter which part of the great heaven and earth you are in, you will rise. Serve me, and I can help you grow faster and raise your limits. Upon hearing this, and Hao wasn't surprised. On his journey, too many people had already said such things to him, and Hao remained composed. Thank you for your kindness, Daoist friend. I have a master, a sect, and a power I serve. I cannot pledge allegiance to you. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, narrowed his eyes. Do you know how high my cultivation level is? And Hao shook his head slightly while the others were extremely nervous, sensing that the situation was far from over. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, raised his right hand, and sword chi surged from his palm. Even though it was just a thread, the implied sword intent left everyone feeling cold. I am a free immortal, which is what you call the 9th level of the immortal path. The strongest of your great heaven and earth, the Xianxia, is also a free immortal, just stepping into the reincarnation tribulation. While I have reached the end of the reincarnation tribulation, just one step away from breaking through to a higher realm. At that time, with just a thought, I could obliterate the entire great heavenly spirit land. While declaring this, Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, wore a defiant smile. He seemed eager to see Hao's reaction upon knowing his power, and Hao's expression indeed changed unnaturally. He knew of the free immortal. That was the realm of the Xianxia Emperor, but from Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's words, the Xianxia Emperor had only entered the threshold of the free immortal realm, whereas Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, had reached the pinnacle of the free immortal realm. The cultivators from Supreme Sect were all showing expressions of disbelief. How could they have come across a being more powerful than Xianxia? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's arrogance was overflowing, making people feel that he wasn't spouting empty words. What about it? Will you take back what you said just now? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, stared at Hao with a mocking smile. And Hao replied, Senior is indeed formidable, but if I were to serve you just because you are stronger, and then tomorrow I meet someone stronger than you, wouldn't I have to betray you too? Addressing the other as senior was already the limit of respect, and Hao was willing to give. He was indeed shocked by Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's cultivation level, but did not believe that Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, was the strongest in the world. The strongest person could only be his teacher. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, upon hearing Hao's refusal, showed a displeased look, but he also felt that what Hao said was reasonable, and his appreciation for Hao grew stronger. Who is your teacher? If I ask him to give you to me, will you no longer refuse? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, asked. At these words, the expressions of the cultivators from Supreme Sect became strange. Although they were shocked by Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's power, they also believed in their hearts that Sword Venerable Fudao was the strongest. Otherwise, how could the immortal dynasty lay aside their hatred? And why would the Holy Court come forward with flattery to win over Sword Venerable Fudao? And Hao frowned. He did not believe that Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, could threaten his teacher, but he feared causing trouble for his master. If you don't tell me, I can calculate it myself. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, huffed, and then started to calculate by using his fingers. He can calculate it? And Hao's expression clearly changed, and the cultivators of Supreme Sect were also frightened by such means. Wu Ju had been silent, but hearing this, he suddenly grew worried for Guan. If that kid impersonates Sword Venerable Fu Dao, could he be found out by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and bring trouble upon himself? Thinking this, Wu Ju grew anxious. All was silent in the great heaven and earth. Everyone was watching Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's calculation. However, after more than a dozen breaths of time had passed, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's brows furrowed. Strange. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was surprised in his heart, but did not dare to show weakness. He could not calculate in Hao's teacher. He did manage to calculate LV Baitian and in Hao's teachers from the Star Sea congregations and Immortal Dynasty. But these people's cultivation levels were too low, and the karmic ties of teacher and student within Hao were not strong, indicating that Hao didn't acknowledge them in his heart. He could feel there was a mysterious existence behind Hao, but no matter what, he could not figure it out. What's going on? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was filled with vigilance. Was there still an existence in the great heavenly spirit land that he couldn't calculate? Even for Xianxia, who had entered the reincarnation tribulation, he could still calculate some traces left by Xianxia before his death. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's gaze flickered, looking at Hao with a somewhat odd look. Could it be that Hao's teacher was the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao, or a reincarnation of the Sword Dao Saint ancestor? The more Zhu Luo Sword Monarch thought about it, the more possible he felt it was. He had come to the great heavenly spirit land for some time now, but could not find anyone or anything related to the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He even doubted whether the Holy Heart Sword Dao had appeared in the great heavenly spirit land at all. With thoughts as swift as lightning, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch put on a smile and said, "And how about you take me to see your teacher? We can put aside your matters. I won't insist on them any longer." And Hao asked in confusion, "Why do you want to see my teacher?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch smiled and said, "To be honest, I come from another world, and I am here to find your teacher. Your teacher is the existence our Taoist tradition has been searching for. As long as we find him, we will acknowledge him as our leader." Another world. Everyone was shocked. So Sword Venerable Fu Dao had such an origin? Upon further thought, they realized Sword Venerable Fu Dao's mysteriousness and unfathomable strength seemed to indicate that he could only come from another world. Any other origin would seem illogical. After hearing this, and Hao furrowed his brows tighter, falling into hesitation. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's face turned solemn, while his heart stirred with excitement. "Holy Heart Sword Dao, finally, I have found you. Do not let me down. My Sword Dao will certainly be stronger than yours." Chapter 441, 10,000 Sword Mountain. In front of a mountain on the north side of the Third Medicine Valley, Guan stood shoulder to shoulder with an Xian as they watched the disciples embed treasure swords into the mountain. This mountain bore no flora at all. It was barren, with rocks of a red hue. The mountain was not naturally formed, but was constructed from special stone materials Gu and had acquired, materials often used to build array platforms and magic artifacts. An Xian turned her head to look at Guan and asked with curiosity, "Master, are you creating this sword mountain to leave a legacy?" Guan smiled and said, "You'll find out later." Seeing him speak so mysteriously, an Xian grew even more curious about the sword mountain before them. Guan raised his hand, and a steel flew out, landing in front of Sword Mountain and embedding itself into the soil. He followed by waving his hand in the air, using his finger as a brush to carve characters onto the steel. An Xian focused her gaze and could feel a force from Guan's strokes, a force she could not describe with words. For some reason, she felt a sense of loneliness. 10,000 Sword Mountain. Guan avoided inscribing the full 10,000 Sword Mountain ridge for fear of directly impacting fate. Omitting one character seemed excessive, but it actually made a world of difference. There were many 10,000 Sword Mountain ridges and 10,000 Sword Mountains across different lands. As soon as the 3 characters for 10,000 Sword Mountain were carved, and Xian suddenly felt that this sword mountain possessed a spirit. Although many disciples were still embedding swords into the mountain, it somehow felt exceptionally distinct to her. Once they are done, disciples are not to set foot here in the future. With that, Guan turned and walked away. And Xian remained standing there, continuing to admire 10,000 Sword Mountain, always sensing that the mountain hid mysteries. In the following days, 10,000 Sword Mountain became a frequent topic among the valley's disciples and visiting cultivators. The very name 10,000 Sword Mountain carried immense force. And since Valley Master Gu and was associated with Sword Venerable Fudao, they couldn't help but pay close attention. The news also spread to the Supreme Sect. Since Guan had claimed he was Sword Venerable Fudao, his fame had skyrocketed, and the major families had even investigated him. Pan An's true identity could no longer be concealed. Since Pan was him, it led the major families to encourage their disciples to study Investiture of the Gods, Journey to the West, and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. They felt Sword Venerable Fudao must have wanted to convey something through Pan. Even if they overthought it, being familiar with Pan An's books would give them something to talk about when facing Sword Venerable Fudao in the future. It could do no harm. One day at noon, outside the Supreme Sect, and Hao, accompanied by Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, emerged from the forest. He turned his head to Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, and said, "I only know my master is in the Supreme Sect, but I don't know exactly who he is. If he wants to meet you, he will seek you out. Remember, do not harm the disciples within the sect." Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, snorted. "As the Sword Lord of Dahong Sword Heaven, would I harm mortal spirits?" He transformed into a streak of sword light and soared towards the Supreme Sect. And Hao followed to catch up, but had already lost track of Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's presence. Thus, and Hao decided to first visit an Xian at the Third Medicine Valley. Half a column of incense later, and Hao landed on a mountain peak from where he could oversee the entire Third Medicine Valley. Compared to many years ago, the Third Medicine Valley had become more prosperous and impressive. Each surrounding mountain was equipped with formations, and he could see the figures of valley disciples laboring and practicing. Things truly change, but people pass away. And Hao murmured to himself, his tone filled with lamentation. He suddenly felt anxious, fearing that an Xian was no longer there. He was about to jump down when a noise from beside him caught his attention. Glancing over, he saw a man and a mouse running toward him. He remembered that mouse. It was Gu An's white spirit rat. The Supreme Sect had many, but he had never seen any as plump as Gu As, which is why he remembered it. Behind the white spirit rat came a strapping young man. Upon seeing the newcomer, and Hao couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This fellow looked a bit like Guan, which made him slightly bewildered. Most importantly, this youth had not a trace of spiritual power, but his physical prowess was astonishingly strong, and Hao even felt that the youth possessed the physical prowess of the Nirvana realm. And Hao became interested in Long Qing. He didn't mind the white spirit rat running past him, his gaze fixed on Long Qing. Suddenly, the white spirit rat stopped, turned its head to look at Hao, its eyes filled with suspicion. It felt as if it had seen this person somewhere before. Notice taken of Hao's gaze, Long Qing involuntarily slowed his steps. In the presence of others, he needed to maintain dignity and couldn't disgrace the Third Medicine Valley. When he reached Hao, Long Qing bowed with a clasped fist and said with a smile, "I am Long Qing, a disciple of the Third Medicine Valley. May I know your respected name? And are you seeking entry into the Third Medicine Valley?" Nowadays, the Third Medicine Valley held a high reputation within the Supreme Sect, and even as a servant disciple, one could face anyone confidently. And Hao sized up Long Qing and asked, "What is your relationship with Guan?" Hearing the direct mention of his master's name and recognizing the extraordinary demeanor, Long Qing guessed that Hao's relationship with his master was not shallow, so he replied, "He is my master. Are you looking for him? He just left today and should be back by evening. Shall I lead you into the valley?" "Master? Why do I feel like you're his descendant?" Hao chuckled. Upon hearing this, Long Qing wasn't angry, since many people had said the same, and he had doubted it himself. However, Guan had refuted any blood relation between them, and ultimately, Long Qing attributed it to being heavily influenced by his master in manner and temperament over time. Long Qing shook his head and said, "I am not, though I wish it were so." And Hao did not press further, nor did he mind the trace of melancholy in his tone. And Hao smiled and said, "Throw a punch at me. If you manage to hurt me, I will pass you divine skills that require no spiritual power to wield." "Is that really a good idea?" Long Qing frowned. "Divine skills? Do you take me for just another master?" He had already learned divine skills from Xianxia, but in his opinion, they weren't all that impressive. And Hao raised a hand, his face challenging as he taunted, "Aren't you afraid? With such a strong physique, but too scared to strike, aren't you failing to appreciate the gift given to you by the heavens?" At these words, Long Qing's temper flared. He lifted his right hand, slowly clenched it into a fist, a visible force enveloping his fist, his robe billowing and hair dancing as his aura abruptly transformed. His expression turned stern, making Hao feel he resembled Guan even more. Long Qing said coldly, "If I end up crippling you, you'd better not regret it." And Hao proudly laughed. "Thinking of crippling me? Even if you train for another 100,000 years, you couldn't." A cold glint flashed in Long Qing's eyes as he suddenly stepped forward, his right fist held back while his body poised as though drawing a bow, unleashing the punch from his waist with all his bodily strength channeled into his fist. He could sense in Hao's strength. Not wanting to lose face, he naturally gave it his all. His punch sounded out like a rumble of thunder, startling the Medicine Valley disciples in the distance. Whether on the mountain or in the valley, they turned their heads towards the source of the noise. Also, beneath the mystic pure tree, an Xian was practicing when she opened her eyes and looked towards the sound, her brows tightly furrowed. Chapter 442. The so-called fellow disciples on the mountaintop. The strong wind spilled over, causing flowers and grass to sway like green waves. Long Qing maintained his punching stance, his face showing disbelief. How could this be? His eyes widened. A tempest of shock surged within him. Following his gaze, he saw his right fist being blocked by a single finger from Hao. His fist, being resisted by Hao's index finger, gave him the sensation of pushing against a mountain. No, mountains aren't this hard. And Hao's hair fluttered in the wind as he stared at Long Qing, his lips curling into a smile. Not a bad reaction, but it seems you haven't fully mastered your power, or rather, you don't really know the kind of power you possess at the moment. With a gentle push of his right index finger, Long Qing felt a force overwhelming like a mountain collapsing over him, throwing him backwards. His complexion drastically changed, and while he instinctively stabilized his body, he still staggered backward several steps before stopping. He looked at Hao with fear in his eyes, swallowing hard before asking, "Who exactly are you?" "My name is Hao. Have you heard of me?" And Hao asked with a smile, his dominance and pride momentarily receding. Now his smile seeming warm as a spring breeze. "And Hao?" Long Qing's eyes widened, excitedly asking, "Are you elder sister and Zin's senior brother?" Hearing this name, and Hao's expression turned gentler as he asked, "Is your teacher sister doing well?" He hadn't used his divine sense to probe the third Medicine Valley, partly for fear of being rude and partly because he was somewhat nervous inside. Of course, she is the leading disciple of the third Medicine Valley. How could she not be doing well? Long Qing, knowing Hao's identity, suddenly felt a sense of closeness. Although an Xian was his teacher's sister, she was like a mother to him in his heart, since he had been raised by an Xian and Ying since he was young. He often heard an Xian mention Hao, naturally forming a close and curious impression of him. Hearing this, Hao completely relaxed and then asked Long Qing to take him to see an Xian. Long Qing was very curious about him. As the two walked towards the valley, they chatted, mostly with Long Qing asking and Hao answering. And Hao quite liked Long Qing. He couldn't quite say why, Perhaps it was Long Qing's strong physique that sparked anticipation. Why does your Medicine Valley have so many great cultivators? And Hao suddenly asked. He even sensed the presence of those from the Immortal Path realm, which piqued his curiosity. Long Qing mysteriously said, "Haven't you heard? My master is Sword Venerable Fu Dao." Hearing this, and Hao was taken aback, asking in surprise, "You have two masters?" "No, it's my master Guan. He is Sword Venerable Fu Dao." Long Qing hurriedly explained, knowing what he should say and what he shouldn't. Anything publicly said by Guan, he could repeat. Guan is Sword Venerable Fu Dao? How is that possible? And Hao frowned. He couldn't forget his first encounter with Guan. Both were very young back then. How could Guan possibly be his master? His first reaction was that there must be some misunderstanding, given that no one in the Supreme Sect would dare impersonate Sword Venerable Fu Dao. My master admitted it himself, and Sword Venerable Fu Dao hasn't challenged him. So isn't he Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Long Qing explained. He was unaware of the relationship between Hao and Sword Venerable Fu Dao. Too much time had passed, and only a few knew of their relationship. Long Qing, having spent years in the Third Medicine Valley and an Xian deliberately not mentioning it, those great cultivators had no interest in gossip, so he was also none the wiser. Admitted it himself, and Hao's brows furrowed tighter, feeling quite uneasy. What did Guan mean by this? Trying to take advantage of him? And Hao decided he needed to have a good talk with Guan, as some matters must not be carelessly touched. Half a stick of incense later, an Xian led Hao into the house, shut the door, and asked him to have a seat. Then she began to brew tea. "Elder brother, I thought you had forgotten about me," an Xian said jokingly as she walked to the table with the teapot. And Hao, who was looking around the room, replied awkwardly, "How could I forget you? Whenever I have time, I come back to see you." An Xian laughed heartily. "You can even forget your own wife and children. Forgetting me wouldn't be strange." Guan became more embarrassed. He coughed lightly and said, "My aspiration is to travel the world. I cannot stay with them. If I maintain relations, it would only bring them trouble." An Xian did not speak of the family's encounters, reasoning that if Guan cared, he would visit on his own, and if he did not, speaking of it held no meaning. Moreover, as long as Guan remained, the family had already received his care, and they would no longer face significant troubles. Thinking of this, an Xian suddenly felt that although Guan was strong, there was still much he could learn about being a person from his master. Just like romantic attachments, the master would not decide lightly, but he would take care of those who had good relations with him. Guan didn't know what she was thinking. After expressing concern for a few moments, he asked the question he most wanted to ask. "I heard that Guan calls himself Sword Venerable Fu Dao. What's that about? How dare he?" An Xian heard this, widened her beautiful eyes, and huffed. "What? He's not worthy? It's not that. Sword Venerable Fu Dao is our master." Guan grew anxious, a side of him that only showed in front of an Xian. An Xian followed, saying, "He is my master too. I have two masters. It's not the same." Guan frowned, unsure how to explain. An Xian said, "Perhaps Sword Venerable Fu Dao truly is him, and our original master isn't him. Has the master, as Sword Venerable Fu Dao, ever met you? Could it be he also received guidance from our first master? Or maybe they have a common master. That's why they both can perform the Demon Shadow divine skill." Having been with Guan for a long time, she too had become crafty, thinking of continuing to confound Guan. "So fun." Guan hesitated and said, "You mean we might actually be fellow disciples?" "Who knows? He calls himself Sword Venerable Fu Dao and hasn't run into trouble," and Xian shrugged. More than that, she was curious about how strong Guan was. She felt a competitive spirit rising within her now. Guan, after hearing this, pondered thoughtfully. Thinking that Guan might truly be Sword Venerable Fu Dao, and his master hadn't clarified this matter, he felt uneasy. No way. He had to find Guan personally. If the master wasn't Sword Venerable Fu Dao, why wouldn't he explain? Could it be he was helping Sword Venerable Fu Dao pose? Could this mean that in the master's eyes, Guan was more important? Gu'an's thoughts were in turmoil. He hadn't felt so perturbed for a long time. Previously, no matter how tough the situation, he had never felt such anxiety because his master was his ultimate pursuit, and he was so determined to become stronger because he didn't want to disappoint his master. And Xian changed the subject, starting to ask about Gu'an's experiences over the years, and Gu'an didn't hide anything, beginning from the time he left the Starseed congregations. Gu'an too wanted to impress his junior sister by sharing his legendary experiences, speaking emotionally, but unfortunately, and Xian hadn't yet learned Gu'an's emotional intelligence to provide timely emotional feedback to him. Time flew by quickly. As evening approached, Gu'an rode the blood prison Great Saint back to the valley leisurely. Although Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, had arrived, he didn't pay much attention to it, going about his usual activities. Having spent the afternoon investigating, Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, had already set his sights on Sword Venerable Fudao. He would soon arrive at the Third Medicine Valley. Gu'an could sense a strong intent to battle hidden within Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's sword intent, an indication that Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, was harboring ill intentions. He was curious to see how strong this prodigy descendant of Dahong Sword Heaven was. Upon entering the valley, Gu'an dismounted and walked alone towards 10,000 Sword Mountain. Simultaneously, Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, appeared out of nowhere in front of the stele at 10,000 Sword Mountain, gazing at the mountain, lost in thought. This mountain harbored a faint sword intent that was difficult to capture. Although he felt no threat, he couldn't see through this sword intent. It didn't resemble the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He had been to the Sword Dao River and knew what the Holy Heart Sword Dao was like. Some disciples passing by on the trail behind him cast surprised glances his way, but seeing he didn't step onto 10,000 Sword Mountain, they didn't come forward to stop him. From a distance, Gu'an spotted Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, and conducted a lifespan detection on him. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, Free Immortal Realm 9, Layers 29, 769, 870/500, 000, 000/500, 000, could killing him yield 40 million years of lifespan? Gu'an thought to himself, his steps neither fast nor slow, leisurely as if wandering through a garden, occasionally greeting disciples he encountered along the way. Chapter 443. You dare challenge Holy Heart, Sword Dao? Daoist friend, you seem unfamiliar. Is there something you need help with? Gu'an's voice came from behind, interrupting Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's thoughts. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch half-turned, glancing at Gu'an with the corner of his eye. Looking at Gu'an, he felt a strange sensation in his heart. Logically, such a mortal shouldn't merit his attention. But somehow, as soon as Gu'an spoke, he had turned around involuntarily, drawn to him. He had only ever felt this way in the presence of those stronger than himself. While sizing up Gu'an, he deduced that Gu'an had some karma with an Hao. Though not closely connected, it indeed existed. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, asked, "Are you the Valley Master of this Medicine Valley?" Gu'an smiled and replied, "Am Gu'an, may I know your esteemed name?" Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, answered, "I am Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, from Dahong Sword Heaven." Dahong Sword Heaven? I have not heard of it, but it sounds grand and powerful. Certainly the force of a holy land, and it must be far from the Taitsong continent. Gu'an feigned surprise. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, was not in the mood for probes, and directly asked, "Are you a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao? Call out your master." As he spoke, he also emitted a trace of sword intent, instantly enveloping the entire Third Medicine Valley. Xianxia appeared out of nowhere in front of Gu'an, staring warily at Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, the Dao patterns on her forehead igniting into fierce flames. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared as well, frowning at Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch. And Hao, Nine-Finger Divine Lord, and Xianxia also quickly appeared. Those great cultivators, who had been playing chess in the dojo, promptly arrived as well. Gu'an could feel that Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's sword intent, was to isolate the Third Medicine Valley from the outside world. Was he intending to create a battlefield? And Hao stared at Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, asking in a deep voice, "Senior, what are you trying to do?" An Xin swiftly ran over, curiously looking at Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch. Her eyes filled only with anticipation. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, ignoring Hao, his gaze settling on Ji Xiaoyu. He squinted and said, "Yin Yang, 4 Emperors, long time no see. Reincarnation Path Emperor, I didn't expect you to undergo reincarnation tribulation here." Ji Xiaoyu, with a composed expression, replied, "Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, it seems Da Hong Sword Heaven has no intentions of invading the great heavenly spirit land. Are you acting alone?" Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, laughed. "Among the Yin Yang 4 Emperors, I only fear the 6th Tao Dust Emperor. Has his reincarnation tribulation ended?" Yin Yang 4 Emperors, Reincarnation Path Emperor, 6th Tao Dust Emperor. The surrounding cultivators listened in astonishment. These names sounded impressive. "You can go find him. He indeed mentioned you," Ji Xiaoyu coldly replied. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, shook his head with a rueful laugh, ignoring the stares of others. He said, "Enough of this. I'm here to find Sword Venerable Fu Dao and challenge him to a battle." Hearing the name Sword Venerable Fu Dao made everyone tense. Daring to challenge Sword Venerable Fu Dao, he must be extraordinary. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor couldn't help but ask, did Da Hong Sword Heaven come for Sword Venerable Fu Dao? He had also witnessed the great battle outside of heaven before. Da Hong Sword Heaven's might had alarmed him. They managed to fight simultaneously against the Immortal Dynasty and the Holy Court, and Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, hadn't even participated in that battle. Just how many free immortals did Da Hong Sword Heaven possess? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, did not answer the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. Despite being only a single great realm apart, he simply looked down on the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. The scene suddenly quieted down, turning the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's face an iron blue. Guan gave a cough and said, "So, it seems you want to challenge me?" At these words, everyone turned to look at him. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's expression changed. He stared intently at Guan and asked, "Are you Sword Venerable Fu Dao?" So that was it. No wonder he had such an unusual reaction. In his eyes, no matter how one looked at it, Guan seemed like a cultivator in the nascent soul realm with no trace of the immortal path realm. And Hao heard Gu An's words and wanted to speak, but stopped himself. He had a suspicion in his heart. Could it be that Martial Master was secretly watching, which is why Guan dared to be so reckless? He also hadn't noticed Gu in concealing his cultivation level, so he didn't think Gu and had the ability to fight. More and more disciples watched from a distance, not daring to get closer, only able to discuss from afar. Guan walked around Ji Xiaoyu and approached the Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch. Ji Xiaoyu grabbed his wrist, trying to persuade him, but Guan just smiled at her and gently pulled his hand away. "Well, I am. How do you want to challenge me?" Guan looked at the Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, and asked with a smile. He was giving the Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch a chance. If he answered poorly, he would perish along with his cultivation. After all, Da Hong Sword Heaven was Yang Pingan's Daoist tradition, and by seniority, the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was also his disciple. As a martial master, how could he kill a fellow sect member upon meeting? The Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, raised his right hand, condensing sword intent in his palm, resembling a thread of lightning, neither dazzling nor enormous, yet it made everyone terrified. This thread of sword intent contained extremely terrifying power, making people shudder. Ji Xiaoyu, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, the Nine-Finger Divine Lord, and others didn't even dare to move, feeling a terrifying sensation that any movement could lead to death. And Hao clenched his fists inside his sleeves, ready to make a move. Long Qing stood at a distance, on tiptoe, watching. He couldn't feel the sword intent of the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, but with so many people gathered, how could he not be curious? Naturally, Well, compare the sword Dao to see whose sword Dao is stronger. Show your holy heart, sword Dao. The Zhu Luo, sword monarch, coldly stated. Holy heart, sword Dao. Ji Xiaoyu and the sun and moon netherworld emperor both drastically changed their expressions, looking at Gu and in astonishment. They had heard of the great fame of the holy heart sword Dao, a supreme inheritance of Dahong sword heaven, able to dominate across 3,000 worlds and be invincible. Guan had actually inherited the holy heart sword Dao. No wonder sword venerable Fu Dao refused to show his true self. It turns out he was a great cultivator from Dahong sword heaven. In any great heaven and earth, there was no one who could silently reach the free immortal realm. Just the heavenly tribulation from divine thought true immortal to free immortal would shake the universe. How could one hide? Hearing the words of the Zhu Luo sword monarch, Guan showed a faint smile. His smile, however, appeared as a provocation in the eyes of the Zhu Luo sword monarch. Just then, Guan suddenly shifted, appearing instantly in front of the Zhu Luo sword monarch. The gust of air lifted the Zhu Luo sword monarch's cloak, and he widened his eyes. Challenged the holy heart, sword Dao. Guan slightly raised his chin, looking at the Zhu Luo sword monarch with indifferent eyes, as if he were looking down on an ant. With his left hand, he then grabbed the Zhu Luo sword monarch's wrist. The entire process went unchallenged by the Zhu Luo sword monarch. It wasn't that he couldn't react, but he was unable to resist. With Guan holding him, the Zhu Luo sword monarch's pupils dilated, and his heart was struck with shock. Guan looked at him and slowly said, "Let's not first discuss whether I possess the Holy Heart Sword Dao. To you all, what status does the Holy Heart Sword Dao even have? Are you even qualified to challenge the Holy Heart Sword Dao?" These words struck the Zhu Luo sword monarch like a hammer, causing his body to tremble, and cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. Everyone else could feel Gu An's dominance, and what surprised them most was how the usually arrogant Zhu Luo sword monarch had suddenly become mute. And how was the most shocked and unable to stay composed. He knew too well how strong the Zhu Luo sword monarch was. A mere breath from him could annihilate a cultivator in the nascent soul realm. Although he hadn't felt Gu An's aura now, he knew something must have happened that made the Zhu Luo sword monarch dare not retaliate. Or rather, the Zhu Luo sword monarch simply couldn't retaliate. Chapter 444 Master. I want to be the heavenly emperor under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Zhu Luo sword monarch trembled all over, unable to speak. All gazes fell on Gu An's hand, which held the wrist of Zhu Luo sword monarch. At that moment, Zhu Luo sword monarch's aura was not a match for Guan, almost as if he was about to kneel at any moment. Gu An's face was so cold, and his gaze, falling into the eyes of Zhu Luo sword monarch, was terrifying. How can this be? The thought of utter disbelief crossed the mind of Zhu Luo sword monarch. Held by Guan, his sword intent dissipated instantly, and the mana within him was suppressed, rendering him unable to mobilize it. He was like a mortal, incapable of resistance, let alone freeing himself of Gu An's grasp. Tao Fruit Realm. This person must have surpassed the free immortal realm and reached an even higher level. Despite Zhu Luo sword monarch's claim to have reached the end of the reincarnation tribulation, in reality, he had yet to find his breakthrough opportunity. This was also why he wanted to challenge the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He hoped to break his own limits through the swordsmanship exchange. The stronger the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao, the more he looked forward to it. Only tremendous pressure could break his shackles. Guan stared at him and asked, "Now tell me, do you still want to challenge me?" Zhu Luo, sword monarch, clenched his teeth, attempting to speak, but he lacked the courage to voice his words. For him to bow his head was harder than death. Damn it, why was the gap so vast? Zhu Luo, sword monarch, harbored a secret hatred, not towards Guan, but at his own weakness. With such a vast difference in strength, his challenge to Guan seemed absurd. He despised those who were weak yet acted arrogantly, and now he was the very person he loathed the most. Zhu Luo's sword monarch was extremely frustrated. He roared inwardly, wanting his sword Dao to break free. But Gu An's power was like a wall of the Tao fruit realm, crushing him mercilessly. No matter how furious, he couldn't shake it. For a moment, the atmosphere was tense. The pressure on everyone vanished, replaced by shock. Could it be that Gu An was truly sword venerable Fu Dao? They couldn't sense how strong Gu An's aura was, still seeming like he was in the nascent soul realm. However, Gu An was clearly suppressing Zhu Luo, sword monarch, and Zhu Luo, sword monarch's earlier arrogance and haughtiness could not have been an act. And Hao was shocked. He looked at Gu An's retreating figure with complex emotions: astonishment, delight, apprehension. Just then, Gu An suddenly let go, smiling and saying, "Since you're not speaking, I'll take it you've given up the challenge. Guests should be treated well. Stay at the Third Medicine Valley for a few days." Zhu Luo, sword monarch, felt the suffocating pressure lift instantly. His first instinct was to flee, but he resisted. If the other party didn't kill him, would fleeing not bring shame to the Dahong, sword heaven? Looking at Gu An's gentle smile, Zhu Luo, sword monarch, didn't know how to respond and wished he could vanish in a thin air. Gu An turned around and beckoned to an Xianxia, who immediately ran over. "Accommodate this Taoist friend," said Gu An, then turned and left. Xiaoyu stared at Gu An in a daze, once again astonished by his strength. Zhu Luo's sword monarch was stronger than her true body, and such a being was completely suppressed by Gu An to the point that he couldn't even speak. How high was his cultivation level, really? Others, too, were shocked by Gu An's cultivation level and conceived speculations about his realm. Zhu Luo, sword monarch, watched Gu An's departing figure, his face flushed with humiliation. When an Xian invited him into the valley, he could only nod and follow her. Although he was suppressed by Gu An, no one dared to mock him. As he walked by, the great cultivators made way, fearing they might provoke his anger. And Hao kept pace with Gu An's steps without catching up immediately, maintaining a distance instead. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stood by Xiaoyu's side and pondered, "Who exactly is this deity?" Xiaoyu did not answer him, and no one else could either. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord was relieved that he hadn't underestimated Gu An due to his cultivation level. Xianxia thought even further ahead. Faced with the provocation of Zhu Luo, sword monarch, Gu An had the power to kill him, yet chose to give him a way out. Such magnanimity was beyond the capacity of ordinary individuals. This was the very path Xianxia himself should pursue. On another side, Longqing ran over to Gu An's side, walking shoulder to shoulder with him, occasionally glancing back at Hao. He could tell Hao seemed to want to talk to Gu An and was adopting a very humble posture. "Master, what just happened?" Longqing asked curiously. His gaze followed and fixed on Zhu Luo, sword monarch, whose presence was so powerful. Just walking down the road, he exuded an air of invincibility, as if even the heavens couldn't contain him. Gu An smiled and said, "Nothing much, just chatted with someone. You can go talk to him directly. He is a senior after all. Remember not to forget your manners." Hearing Gu An's words, Longqing really did want to go meet with Zhu Luo, sword monarch. After a while, Gu An went upstairs alone, and Hao stayed at the bottom of the loft, hesitating for a moment before he also went upstairs. He had just reached the door when he heard Gu An's voice. "Remember to close the door behind you." Upon hearing this, Hao instantly felt calm. All his doubts were washed away. This was definitely his master. Suppressing his excitement, he closed the door. He strode to the table and then knelt down, kowtowing to Gu An. Gu An did not stop him, graciously accepting his gesture of respect. And Hao looked up at Gu An and exclaimed excitedly, "Master, you've kept me in the dark for so long. No wonder you took an Xian as a disciple. You've been looking after her all along. Hasn't she known all this time?" Guin smiled and replied, "She didn't know at the beginning. She was just as excited as you when she found out. Stand up and speak." And Hao hurriedly stood up. He had too many things to tell his master. Guin invited him to sit down and then inquired about his experiences over the years. And Hao did not dare to hide anything. He did not overly embellish his narrative, sharing both his hardships and achievements. After a long time, Guin asked, "What are your goals for the future?" Unlike an Xian, and Hao had been wandering outside for years, and his ambition only grew higher and higher. So Guin had no intention of keeping him. Taking a deep breath, and Hao said, "Master, I want to become the Heavenly Emperor, just like the Jade Emperor you've written about." Guin smiled and said, "Those two words should not be uttered carelessly because real immortals do exist. Indeed, to be besieged by immortals. Real immortals are far more terrifying than mortals can imagine. If there is order, there must be a ruler, and the leader of the immortals might be known as the Heavenly Emperor." Upon hearing this, and Hao was startled and cautiously asked, "Immortal dynasty?" "They are far from it." Guin's response let Hao breathe a sigh of relief and also filled him with surprise. If the Immortal Dynasty was not considered a group of immortals, how powerful were the true immortals? Guin looked at Hao and also discerned his life grid. Life grid, the combination of fate and chi fortune, indicates that the stronger the life grid, the better the chi fortune and longer lifespan. And Hao had a continuous stretch of chi fortune, and his life seemed to have no visible end, which Guin saw for the first time in such a life grid. Indeed, the limit of 9,999 years was simply the upper limit of mortal realm, not the limit for Hao. After reaching the Nirvana realm, Hao's lifespan limit became 6 nines, and Guin estimated that breaking through further great realms would continue to extend it. Chapter 445. Want to become a disciple? Do you aspire to be the Heavenly Emperor because you want power and influence? Guin asked curiously. The Jade Emperor journey to the west wasn't described as particularly strong, at least not the strongest, and Hao had always wanted to be the strongest. Could it be that his mindset had changed now that he was considering becoming the Heavenly Emperor? And Hao answered, "I want strength, and I want power and influence. Along the way, I've been in many places, left behind many people, but I feel that this path is not right. However, to become stronger, even if it's not right, I still have to continue on. By becoming the Heavenly Emperor, I can protect those I wish to protect and shelter all living beings from suffering." "I didn't expect you to still have such a benevolent heart," Guin remarked. And Hao's face turned red, and he said, "Master, what do you mean? Do you see me as someone ruthless, without bottom lines? After all, I have inherited the righteousness of the Supreme Sect. No matter where I go, when I encounter people in suffering, as long as I can help, I will take action." Guin smiled. He indeed had seen such behavior from Hao, though it wasn't frequent. Compared to Xianxia, Hao still had a long way to go. However, Guin never had specific expectations for what Hao should become. He imparted the technique of immortal cultivation to Hao due to fate. As long as Hao didn't do evil, he was loath to nitpick. Guin continued to chat with Hao, which gave Hao a deeper understanding of his master. It seemed no different from their previous interactions, but Hao felt his master's vastness, like the Shanghai Sea, with the ability to conquer the world, yet able to recluse here, laughing and chatting with anyone. Every word Guin said seemed sincere in Hao's eyes. When Guin's image merged with the image of the master in his heart, it was both sincere and contained wisdom, as if every word from his master taught him and held expectations for his growth. Suddenly, Hao thought of something and asked, "Is Xianxia your direct disciple?" Guin smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, he knows I am Sword Venerable Fudao. I even told him he has an impressive senior brother, just didn't say it was you." Upon hearing this, Hao's face broke into a smile. He had a profound memory of Xianxia, and they had even agreed to a duel at the Sky Ranking Tournament. He had never forgotten it. Where did he go? Why haven't I seen him? Hao asked curiously. Guan recounted Yang Jian's background and current whereabouts, leaving and how silent. The Holy King of the Holy Court. He had visited the Holy Court, witnessed the demeanor of the Holy King, and suddenly felt pressure. Yang Jian's talent had already won his approval. Coupled with the background of the Holy King, he might indeed surpass him. Guan continued, "Besides Yang Jian, I have taught others, including demons. Don't underestimate them." His tone seemed joking, but his eyes were sharp, and Hao felt his fighting spirit ignited after hearing this. Full of confidence, he said, "Master, rest assured, I will always be your most outstanding disciple." Guan smiled and nodded, but his heart disagreed. If that were the case, wouldn't it mean that my teaching ability is inferior to your talent? He had to cultivate a disciple stronger than Hao. And Hao thought of the Annihilation God Emperor and began to say, "Master, previously I encountered, don't speak." Guan interrupted him, causing him to look puzzled. Guan continued, "Your realm is still low. When you delve into the way of cause and effect, you'll understand that even when you speak of certain beings in secret, even without naming them, merely describing their likeness and deeds can alert them. They'll keep an eye on that existence. His help for you was casual, without any ulterior motives. You can rest assured." Longing was evident in Hao's eyes. What kind of realm must one reach to be so powerful? He adjusted his emotions and stopped thinking about the Annihilation God Emperor. Moonlight streamed through the window as the master and disciple continued their chat. The atmosphere was pleasant, with Hao occasionally standing up, using actions to describe the scene he was talking about, while Guan looked on with a smile, as if enjoying a storytelling session. And Hao was excited because he could finally sit and talk with his master. Guan too was content. Watching the vigorous Hao, he thought of the resolute youth who, in order to protect his sister from the village, had boldly faced an invincible wolf demon. In the blink of an eye, over 800 years had passed. The young ones had begun to stand on their own, while many of Guan's contemporaries had passed away. Considering this, Guan was not sad. He still wore a smile on his face. The old friends had passed, but the younger generation was still there. Such was life. The moon set and the sun rose. In the early morning, Ahau stepped out the door, looking towards the vast ranks of disciples in the distance, watching them practice. His gaze drifted. Previously, he too had watched the Medicine Valley disciples' morning practice, but he had never felt quite like he did today. He realized that the movements of the Medicine Valley disciples carried a profound mystery, truly worthy of being the body-strengthening method created by his master, embodying the simplicity of the Great Path. Guan stepped out of the house, standing behind him and looking towards the distant spectacle of the practice. Over 4,000 people practicing together was stirring the spiritual energy in the valley, a magnificent sight. "Hurry up! What are you looking at?" Guan urged. Coming to his senses, Ahau turned back with a smile and then started walking down the stairs. Reaching the corner of the staircase, he turned his head toward Guan and asked, "What kind of person do you hope I will become?" Guan glanced at him and then looked up to the east, saying, "I hope you become like that proud sun, radiant and shining. Even if you fall into the lowest valleys, you always rise up, climbing to a height that all living beings find unreachable." After hearing this, and how unconsciously looked towards the rising sun on the horizon, his smile faded, his expression turning serious. Chapter 445. Want to become a disciple _2. I will. I definitely will. And Hao said determinedly, then turned his head and continued down the stairs. Guan didn't see him off. Instead, he kept looking toward the east. The morning sun rose, streaking across the sky, only to be chased down by darkness again. When the world fell into darkness, new sunlight broke through the earth's surface, illuminating all things and banishing the darkness. After daylight, Guan stepped out of his room again. He faced the blazing sun and stretched languidly. The first day after 1,000 years seems no different than the rest, Guan said with a smile, talking to himself. Today he turned 1,000 years old. In his eyes, This marked a brand new page in his life. He followed the stairs down, and just as he reached the bottom, Xiaoyu walked out from inside the house. Will you intervene in in-house conflict with the Sky Demon Great Sect? Xiaoyu looked at Guan and asked. 97 years had passed since Enhao left. While the world's events changed each year, Gu An's life in the Third Medicine Valley remained the same, and he was content with that. Guan casually replied, Why intervene? I'm just an ordinary cultivator who loves to garden. I have no wish to get entangled in trouble. Having said that, he moved forward with his steps. Since Xiaoyu had learned of his strength, she no longer behaved like a petulant girl, which actually made him find her rather dull. As Xiaoyu watched him walk away, she followed up with, But as he continues like this, the Sky Demon Great Sect surely will not let him go. You will definitely save him. According to my investigation over these years, behind the Sky Demon Great Sect stands the Heavenly Demon, who is also at the peak of the free immortals. Guan stopped his steps and turned his head to look at her, asking, What if you surpass the free immortal in this life? What will you do? Xiaoyu paused, then said, I am just a reincarnation body. It's impossible for me to reach the realm of my true self. With more of her memories reviving, her reluctance was fading. She was gradually becoming her true self, or rather, reverting to her original temperament. After listening, Guan appeared thoughtful, then continued on his way. Xiaoyu started to ponder Gu An's words. Must a reincarnation body truly not surpass the original self? Thinking it through, she didn't know how to reach a higher realm beyond the reincarnation tribulation. She had received no guidance. Xiaoyu felt as though she had grasped at something, but it wasn't clear what it really was. She looked at Gu An's retreating figure, feeling that somehow he was reminding her of something. Gu was also in deep thought. Within the lifespan samsara, Long Zhan had once surpassed him, and he believed that a reincarnation body could possibly surpass the original self. His curiosity aroused. If his reincarnation body continued to grow, what would happen? Guan was merely curious and felt no urge to experiment. For the time being, he had no desire to open another lifespan samsara because he was saving up his lifespan for the next breakthrough. Although no existence threatened him at the moment, he couldn't relax. He had to maintain his progression in strength, not wait for an unbeatable foe to arrive before starting to regret. With these thoughts in mind, he made his way towards 10,000 Sword Mountain. A meteor streaked across the sky, caught perfectly by his gaze. Another free immortal has descended. It seemed it wouldn't take many years for another earth-shattering war to erupt. But there had been many such wars in recent years, with high-level beings fighting outside of heaven, clearly all fearing they might shatter the great heavenly spirit land. Gu An's gaze then shifted towards the depths of the cosmos. The Black City, created by the Annihilation God Emperor, was still devouring Tao's spiritual energy, and Guan could sense a faint power gathering inside it. The Annihilation God Emperor seemed to be refining some kind of supreme treasure, but it was unknown whether it was an Immortal Path supreme treasure. Was he trying to force Long Qing out by using this treasure? Guan pondered curiously in his heart. He wasn't in a hurry at all. As long as the true form of the Annihilation God Emperor didn't appear, he felt no fear. For Guan, time was even more important. He made his way to Sword Mountain, where treasure swords covered the mountain, reflecting sharp sword lights under the sunlight. Stepping up the mountain, he touched every sword hilt along his path, infusing each with the sword intent of different swordsmanship. The swords he touched would instantly lose their luster, seeming to lose their spirit. But in reality, they were being nurtured by the sword intent, with the underground spiritual energy altering the essence of the swords. After a while, Guan reached the mountain peak. Looking down upon all the swords, his figure was noticed by Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, who was under a distant tree. Since coming to Third Medicine Valley, Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, had not left. He acted properly, no longer arrogant and imposing. He wanted to understand Guan. Although Guan didn't acknowledge that he had inherited the Holy Heart Sword Dao, Instinct told the sword monarch that Guan must be connected to it. Perhaps it was because of the relationship between the Holy Heart Sword Dao and a Hong Sword Heaven that Guan had spared him. Putting himself in Guan's shoes, the way he had previously addressed Guan was enough to warrant death 10,000 times over. It was precisely because he understood this that he acted so properly and would occasionally give pointers to the disciples in the valley. A figure rode a sword through the air, landing beside Zhu Luo, sword monarch. This was a man in blue attire, holding a treasure sword. He saluted Zhu Luo, sword monarch, saying, "Senior, I have learned the swordsmanship you taught me." The standoff between Guan and Zhu Luo, sword monarch, had not spread. Firstly, because the sword monarch had isolated Third Medicine Valley with his sword intent at the time, and secondly, since the Supreme Sect saw that Guan didn't kill Zhu Luo, sword monarch, they thought to win him over. This was a being of the 9 heavens of the immortal path, and if they could successfully win him over, the Supreme Sect could leap to become a powerful force under heaven. The blue-attired man was Xianxia, the disciple with the strongest talent in the history of Third Medicine Valley. Xianxia had heard from LV Baitian that a powerful sword cultivator had appeared in Third Medicine Valley. He loved using swords, so he took the initiative to visit Zhu Luo, sword monarch. Considering Guan's face, the sword monarch gave pointers to many valley disciples. Faced with Xianxia, he was not stingy. "Just learn it then," Zhu Luo, sword monarch, said indifferently, his gaze fixed on the silhouette of Gu, and Xianxia indeed had exceptional talent, but he was not the strongest he had seen, certainly not compared to how he had met before. Thus, he had no intention of taking a disciple. He was now focused on becoming a disciple of Guan. How could he have the time to take on his own disciple? Xianxia followed Zhu Luo, sword monarch's gaze, and saw Guan. His feelings towards Guan were complicated. He even felt a bit defiant. He believed his own talent was strong, even comparable to Hao, but during his time in Third Medicine Valley, he didn't receive special attention from Guan. He felt overlooked. Of course, he still had fond feelings for Third Medicine Valley. Although Guan hadn't given him special treatment, he was kind to him. He didn't dislike Guan. He just wanted to prove himself to Guan. More than 90 years ago, he had witnessed Hao's strength. This was why he was so eager to seek out Zhu Luo, sword monarch. Catching up to Hao was not going to be easy. Xianxia turned back to Zhu Luo, sword monarch, asking, "Senior, wouldn't you like to see my swordsmanship?" Zhu Luo, sword monarch, replied impatiently, not interested. Upon hearing this, Xianxia's expression became unnatural. Suddenly, the sword monarch remembered the valley disciple's assessment of Xianxia. He was the pride of Third Medicine Valley. Guan must be paying attention to him too. No, he couldn't offend Guan. He still wished to become his disciple. Zhu Luo, sword monarch, looked at Xianxia and began to scrutinize him. Chapter 446. Pure Land Under Heaven. Xianxia had been feeling quite stifled, but seeing the Zhu Luo, sword monarch, reassessing him, hope rekindled in his heart. "Do you want to learn the most superior swordsmanship?" the Zhu Luo, sword monarch, asked seriously. Upon hearing this, Xianxia quickly responded, "Of course I do. Would the senior be willing to teach me?" The Zhu Luo, sword monarch, raised his right hand, and a piece of silvery white jade appeared between his fingers. He tossed the jade to Xianxia, who caught it instinctively. "If you can comprehend the swordsmanship contained within this, I will pass on my sword Dao to you. After that, dominating the great heavenly spirit land will certainly not be difficult," the Zhu Luo, sword monarch, said calmly. Upon hearing these words, Xianxia immediately bent at the waist to bow and thank the Zhu Luo, sword monarch. The Zhu Luo, sword monarch, waved his hand, indicating that Xianxia could leave. Xianxia didn't dare to linger and turned to leave. Yet, he couldn't help but glance toward Guan. He wasn't foolish. The Zhu Luo, sword monarch, had clearly been impatient just moments ago, but after looking at Gu and his attitude changed completely, indicating that it was only because of Guan's face that he agreed to impart his swordsmanship to Xianxia. This made Su Jie's feelings even more complex. He was very grateful to Guan and even wanted to thank him, but he felt like there was an invisible wall between himself and Gu, and that was very difficult to cross. Meanwhile, Guan was still standing on 10,000 Sword Mountain, deducing fates and cause and effect. He saw many people coming and going at the foot of the mountain. These were visions of the future. Inheriting the memories of Xianxia, his understanding of the Sword Tao and fate was profound. Using the sword intent of 10,000 Sword Mountain to deduce the future, he could see the shadows of times far away. Suddenly, he spotted a figure standing still at the foot of the mountain, looking up at him. Guan slightly raised his eyebrows, focusing on the figure, his eyes revealing a hint of surprise. He deduced that this figure in 10,000 Sword Mountain had the closest connection of fate. This individual would inherit all the sword intent of 10,000 Sword Mountain and even boost its chi fortune. He could even deduce the person's name and identity. A talent like this in the new epoch, Guan thought to himself, feeling somewhat emotional. The talent of this individual in the Sword Tao was extremely terrifying, almost like he was seeing another Xianxia. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this individual's talent was even stronger than Enhao's. Regrettably, he wasn't born in the same epoch as Enhao. By the time he came into this world, Enhao had already become the most dazzling sun in the heavens. Guan didn't keep his focus on this future talent, continuing to deduce the future, not to probe for something, but to increase his own understanding of cause and effect and the way of destiny. He stood there the entire day. Although the disciples in the valley were curious about what he was pondering, no one dared to disturb him. No matter how Guan was viewed by the outside world, within Medicine Valley, all the disciples believed he was formidable, and many had even concluded that he was Sword Venerable Fudao. This led to more and more disciples choosing to stay in Medicine Valley after their foundation establishment, and those who became masters often returned to visit. For this reason, Guan had established several positions within Medicine Valley to help manage the disciples. And in Xian also delineated several other positions, causing Third Medicine Valley to unavoidably form a hierarchy of power, much like a mini immortal cultivation world. The next morning, Guan rode the Blood Prison Great Saint to Xianxia Valley. Over the years, Xianxia Valley had expanded, providing a steady income to Guan's lifespan. The valley also fostered many talented individuals cultivated by Li Xiandao, who had established good relations with Gu and loved to mingle with the talented. And no matter what they played, they would not give up easily after losing, always coming back to challenge Guan. While Guan's outward cultivation level was at the divinity transformation realm, the disciples of Xianxia Valley all knew he was very strong. The change in demeanor and appearance enabled Gu to no longer deliberately conceal his strength, though at most he didn't appear overly strong. Currently, his undefeated record in the battles of combat at Xianxia Valley made him want to laugh whenever he thought of that prince consort challenging him again. The Blood Prison Great Saint, too, was looking forward to the upcoming battle of Xianxia Valley. He also wanted to see those arrogant individuals suffer setbacks. Guan, admiring the scenery along the way, said with a light laugh, "Next spring festival, I will unseal you. Are you ready?" Blood Prison Great Saint didn't react with too much surprise, as he had long been prepared. In a low voice, he said, "Master, I have been ready. Even if I regain my cultivation level, I will never betray you and will always follow you." He had already begun cultivating the primordial reincarnation skill, and once unsealed, his cultivation level would soar, perhaps achieving nirvana in one fell swoop. Guan laughed. "Cultivate well in the future. Your strength also represents my face." These words instantly excited Blood Prison Great Saint. He had been waiting for this. He wished to always be by Guan's side. He had come to realize that those who left, despite their wandering, could hardly compare to those who stayed with Guan. Enhao was an exception. If Enhao had stayed by Guan's side, his achievements would have only been greater. And he felt that, in the future, there would definitely be individuals who would appear with even greater talent than Enhao. "Master, Rest assured, I will cultivate hard. Ill first set, and how is my goal? Blood Prison Great Saint said excitedly, trembling all over. Guan said no more, letting him continue on. In the following journey, Blood Prison Great Saint felt as if he was floating, his thoughts lost in boundless imagination. Autumn arrived. At the Supreme Sect's subsect within Yi Mansion, Guan sat at a table sipping tea, watching Yilan instruct a young girl in the ways of spellcraft. The autumn breeze blew into the courtyard, making everything seem perfect. Yilan turned to Guan and asked, "Senior brother, do you have anything to say?" The practicing girl cast a doubtful glance at Guan. She had always been skeptical about this senior uncle. Her master said that her senior uncle was very strong, but she couldn't help feeling that he only seemed handsome rather than formidable. Guan responded with a smile, "You're teaching quite well. I've nothing to say. I'm nowhere near your level." The constant emergence of geniuses from the Third Medicine Valley is widely known. Your ability to instruct disciples is incomparable to ordinary people, Yilan said, shaking her head. She was sincere. There was no need for her to flatter, given the relationship she had with Guan. Guan replied, "It's all due to the disciples' hard work. It doesn't have much to do with me." He wasn't interested in the disciple Yilan had recently taken on. The girl's maximum lifespan was around 3,000 years, considered a prodigy, indeed, but now a true talent was approaching the Supreme Sect's subsect. Zhu, that ultra-talented individual with the Tai Chu swallowing Yuan body. Guan had been keeping an eye on her, witnessing her crossing the ocean to reach the Taitsong continent. She came to the Taitsong continent because she had heard it was one of the few pure lands left in the world, and she wanted to cultivate in peace under the protection of Sword Venerable Fudao. She had previously received the Stepping Path of Ages a step from Guan, and now she had made some progress, being able to use it in battle. Although in Guan's view, her Stepping Path of Ages step was rather unrefined, this divine skill was difficult to cultivate. To be able to master it and employ it in combat at less than 600 years of age, her aptitude was definitely terrifying. Hearing Guan's words, Yilan couldn't help but pout. She could see that Guan was not interested in her disciple, Xianxia. Indeed, compared with a talent like Su Jia, Xianxia did indeed seem mediocre. Chapter 447 Immortal Creation. Xianxia felt quite disgruntled as she listened to her master heap praise upon Guan. Despite having only met Guan a few times, she spent all day and night with her master. In her eyes, her master was strict and decisive, wielding tremendous power, the strongest woman she had ever seen. She too wanted to become a female cultivator like Yilan. It was precisely because of this that it was particularly unpleasant for her to watch Yilan ingratiate herself with Guan, but she dared not show her anger in front of her master. Xianxia feels hostility towards you and wants to beat you up. Do you wish to perform a lifespan detection on her? A notification appeared before Guan's eyes, causing him to pause. He couldn't help but glance at Xianxia. Xianxia was staring at Guan, but as soon as she met his gaze, she quickly turned her head away, her face and even her ear tips flushed red as though they were about to bleed. Guan shook his head with a smile, not taking her seriously. What would be the point of taking issue with a 14-year-old child? If it wasn't murderous intent, he was too lazy to care about it. He dealt with people daily. Naturally, some would be dissatisfied with him. It didn't mean he should kill anyone who harbored dissatisfaction towards him. Yilan had no idea what Xianxia was thinking. After giving her a few words of advice, she walked over to Gu, and considering it was rare for Guan to visit, Yilan was preoccupied with him, even thinking that Xianxia was somewhat in the way. Seeing her come over, Guan stopped paying attention to Zhu, Shi, and focused on chatting with Yilan. An hour later, Xianxia took her leave. Once her presence had faded, Yilan could no longer contain herself and pounced on Gu in, "Be careful about the impression you're making. What if your disciple comes back? What about it? I'm not afraid of anyone knowing. You're a law enforcement elder now. You should be mindful of the impact. If it means losing my position as a law enforcement elder, then so be it. I miss you so much. Elder brother, you can't touch there. Elder brother, you smell so good. The autumn wind swept away the dead leaves from the trees. The leaves, once they fell to the ground, seemed unwilling to give up and fluttered in the air, struggling for a long time before finally landing helplessly in the corner of the wall. In a dimly lit grand hall, countless figures were scattered around, humans and demons alike, all wrapped in demonic chi, making for a terrifying sight. All their gazes were fixed forward. On a stone platform suspended a red and purple orb of light, displaying a silhouette. This figure seemed to sit lazily on a throne made of bones, as if in another world. He too was surrounded by demonic chi, covered in thick armor, and at his feet lay a black lion with a ferocious face, 3 tails, each tail ending in a snake's head, hissing with tongues flickering. He was the heavenly demon great emperor, the ruler of the heavenly demon clan, and a mastermind behind the sky demon great sect. So you're saying you're also unclear about who's pulling the strings behind the Xianxia divine dynasty? The voice of the heavenly demon great emperor emanated from within the orb. His tone was icy cold, quieting every heavenly demon in the hall. The black-robed elder at the forefront spoke up. Your Majesty, the opponent hails from Xianxia, the reincarnation land, and indeed we cannot discern any concrete information from the mortal world. The others concurred. Over the years, they had sent many spies and even turned some people from the Xianxia divine dynasty, yet they were constantly unable to gather useful intelligence. The heavenly demon great emperor fell silent for a while before speaking. What is the stance of the Xianxia divine dynasty then? A woman in red responded. They wish to gather the souls of the dead. They want all beings in the great heavenly spirit land to perish, which, in a sense, aligns with our intentions because we too wish to destroy the great heavenly spirit land. The fingers of the heavenly demon great emperor began to tap on the armrest, adorned with skulls. The tapping sounds chilling everyone in the hall into silence. After a long while, the heavenly demon great emperor finally spoke. If that's the case, then let us fully unleash the great calamity upon the world, and let the great heavenly spirit land feel despair ahead of time. As his words fell, the 3-tailed black lion at his feet howled upwards, its roar deafening. The heavenly demons in the hall kneeled, silent, all staring fervently at the heavenly demon great emperor. As the year came to a close, with snow covering the great heaven and earth, soon to melt, the supreme sect began preparations for the spring festival. The Third Medicine Valley was also in the midst of preparing for the spring festival. Unlike previous years, it was said that Guan was planning a grand celebration, much to the anticipation of the disciples. Come on, tell me, what are you up to? Shenzhen urged Guan, looking quite beautiful today in a white dress and a silver jade phoenix crown, embodying elegance and nobility. As Guan was writing, he casually responded, "You'll know when the time comes." This made Shenzhen even more curious, but no matter how much she pressed him, Guan simply wouldn't spill the beans. Feeling it futile, Shenzhen stood up to leave. It wasn't long after her departure that Wuxia arrived, also inquiring about Guan's preparations. Now that Guan was linked with Sword Venerable Fu Dao, every word and action of his was the center of attention. Rumors of his preparing a grand celebration had the higher echelons of the sect abuzz. More and more of the upper-level members were convinced that Guan was Sword Venerable Fu Dao. If Sword Venerable Fu Dao was planning a celebration, how could they not be concerned? Nevertheless, Guan still did not reveal the truth, leaving Wu Ju to depart in frustration. In the following time, a stream of visitors came to see Guan down at the pavilion. Long Qing, holding a wooden stick, looked up at the second floor and asked Blood Prison Great Saint, "You're guarding master every day. Do you have any insider news?" Blood Prison Great Saint lay on the ground and glanced at him, ignoring the question. Long Qing squatted down, pulling out a white jade bottle from his storage bag, whispering in a mysterious tone, "This is heart-cleansing jade honey, exceedingly rare. I have only 2 bottles, and am sharing one with you." The blood prison great saint opened his eyes and revealed a smile, saying, "You've put in some thought, kid, so it'll give you a hint. The master wants to create an immortal realm existence, right here in the valley, in the Third Medicine Valley." Upon hearing this, Long Qing's eyes widened, and his heartbeat quickened. He carefully asked, "Master, whom will you choose?" "I have no idea," replied the blood prison great saint. Using his divine sense to open the bottle, the blood prison great saint drew out the liquid and swallowed it in one gulp. His bovine eyes then bent into a smile, clearly pleased. Long Qing stood up and turned to look towards the second floor, his imagination beginning to run wild. As the spring festival drew near, the grapevine buzzed with news that Sword Venerable Fudao of the Supreme Sect was about to create an immortal path realm existence. The higher ranks of the Supreme Sect kept the news from the ears of the disciples of various departments within the sect, suppressing the information. Once they had finished arranging the spring festival affairs for the Supreme Sect, they hurried over, eager to join the excitement. As noon approached, Vice Sect leader Xianxia entered the valley and was taken aback by the bustling scene. So many people. He even noticed that the big shots from the families had arrived faster than him. While pondering this, he went up to greet them. Even as Vice Sect leader, he still needed to greet those great cultivators proactively. At the entrance of the valley, several cultivators arrived, including Zhu Shi, dressed in azure garments. Zhu Shi was curiously looking over the Third Medicine Valley. Having first visited the Supreme Sect subsect to learn about the relationship between the Supreme Sect and Sword Venerable Fudao, she wanted to establish herself there. Thus, she came to the main sect. After some inquiries, the Third Medicine Valley became her first choice. To be precise, it was the first choice for most new disciples entering the sect. However, entering the Third Medicine Valley wasn't so easy now. Zhu Shi had barely managed to get the opportunity to visit the Third Medicine Valley for the festival by giving gifts. Walking ahead of her was an elder from the book collection hall, brimming with excitement as if he were introducing his own domain. He was introducing the Third Medicine Valley. He was on good terms with Gu and making him feel sort of home here. Zhu Shi was curious about the Valley Master Guan. She had heard that this Valley Master was a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, who didn't compete or fight over matters, was amiable with others, and was more than willing to train disciples. Inside the Supreme Sect, Guan had an excellent reputation. Zhu Shi hadn't heard a bad word about him. Traveling the world for hundreds of years, it was the first time she heard of such a remarkable person. Coupled with the earth-shattering exploits of Sword Venerable Fudao, she was looking forward to meeting Gu and Zhu. She looked around, curious about everything inside the Third Medicine Valley. As they approached the dojo, an Xian suddenly approached. The elder from the book collection hall greeted an Xian warmly. Guan had introduced an Xian to all his contacts within the Supreme Sect, and they were all aware of Gu An's attitude toward an Xian, so everyone treated an Xian warmly. "Today, elderly, we must have a good drink, not returning until we're drunk. My master often talks about you," said an Xian with a bow and a hearty laugh. These words made elderly feel quite comfortable, his spine straightening up. He pinched his beard and glanced at the disciples beside him, who looked up to him in admiration. An Xian turned her gaze to Zhu Shi and asked with a smile, "May I ask if you are Zhu Shi, Miss Zhu?" Stunned, Zhu Shi and the others, including elderly, looked at her in surprise. "I am. What about it?" Zhu Shi asked cautiously. While she was a cultivator of the void-crossing realm and hid even greater strength, she was very cautious within the Supreme Sect. It was her survival instinct. "Don't be nervous," an Xian said with a smile. "My master told me to take good care of you. He knew you would come." "Your master?" Zhu Shi grew even more nervous. She had encountered many great cultivators who could divine destiny, and she always kept her distance from such entities to avoid trouble. An Xian nodded and said, "My master is the Valley Master. Come on, they'll take you to settle in." After saying this, she bowed to elderly, excusing herself. Under everyone's watchful gaze, Zhu Shi didn't dare to flee and had no choice but to follow in Xian reluctantly. Elder Li and his disciples were astonished. Zhu Shi had such a connection? Suddenly, Elder Li felt the medicinal herbs he had collected for Gu and were a bit hot to handle. But thinking of Gu An's smiling face, he calmed down again. Guan wasn't a petty person. At worst, he would return the herbs. Yes, that's it. He could also prepare a gift for Zhu Shi and take the opportunity to apologize to Guan, thereby increasing his chances for more interaction. A smile spread across Elder Li's face as he suddenly found Zhu Shi rather agreeable. On the other side, Zhu Shi couldn't help but ask why Guan was looking for her, but an Xian said she didn't know either. You don't have to worry. If my master has noticed you, it must mean he has a good impression of you. Maybe he will even take you as his disciple. Just settle in comfortably as if it was your own home, and if you encounter any problems in the future, you can come to me. I forgot to tell you, I am the head disciple of the valley and in charge of everything, and Xian said, turning her head towards Zhu Shi with a gentle smile. Zhu Shi was touched by her smile, warming up to her and feeling her stress dissipate. With such a kind personality, the valley master might indeed be a rare good person. Zhu Shi thought to herself, although in Zin's cultivation level was only at the nascent soul realm, she didn't look down on her. Instead, Zhu Shi wanted to deepen their friendship. And Xian thought to herself, she doesn't seem to recognize my master. Could she be the offspring of one of my master's old friends? She did not think of Zhu Shi as a genius. When she said Guan might take Zhu Shi as a disciple, it was just a habit of making big promises, something she learned from Guan. A few kind words didn't cost anything, and maybe she could forge a closer relationship. The two women chatted warmly as they proceeded. Underneath an old tree, Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, stood up, looking at the commotion in the distance, and muttered, "Such clamor." Suddenly, he caught sight of someone, causing him to exclaim in surprise. It was a white-haired old man, leaning on a cane in one hand and resting the other on his waist, just entering the valley and looking around. The free, immortal, reincarnation tribulation. This aura feels so familiar, as if I've seen it somewhere. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, pondered to himself, his eyes fixed on the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man seemed to sense something, turned his head to look, and when he saw Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, his white eyebrows furrowed. Chapter 448. The Strongest Sword Dao Dahong Sword Heaven's Sword Intent. The white-robed elder gazed at Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, contemplating with astonishment. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, also fixed his eyes on him. Their gazes locked, and both could see the wariness in each other's eyes. The white-robed elder quickly shifted his gaze away and continued onward. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, had no intention of picking a fight either. After all, they bore no grudges against each other. During the reincarnation tribulation, he would often encounter other free immortals. If he were to confront each one, even Dahong Sword Heaven might not be able to protect him. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, headed toward 10,000 Sword Mountain. The number of visitors to the Third Medicine Valley was increasing, and 10,000 Sword Mountain had also become a spectacle that many people came to observe. And Xian had already arranged for hundreds of disciples to guard the perimeter of 10,000 Sword Mountain, to prevent outsiders from trespassing. There can be no mistake about the sword intent on this mountain. It's definitely Sword Venerable Fudeos. With such an abundance of sword intent, and each one distinct upon careful observation, what could the old Sword Venerable be trying to do? Perhaps he's creating a land of inheritance. This mountain is too lowly for someone like him. The sect leader should assist in building a taller one. That makes sense. Sword Venerable Fudeos, Sword Dao, deserves the tallest mountain in the world. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, arrived and heard the discussions, his lips twitching involuntarily. He wasn't angry that people said Sword Venerable Fudeos, Sword Dao, was the strongest. He was merely amazed at the shamelessness of these mortals. Trying to attract the attention of Sword Venerable Fudao with such tactics? Ridiculous. Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, came to the back of the crowd and spoke up. It's not about the height of the mountain. Sword Venerable Fudao's Sword Dao is indeed the strongest, but precisely because he is so powerful, even if he were to place just one sword anywhere, it would suppress all Sword Dao in the world and command respect from all beings. Upon these words, everybody looked his way, while those who had just been flattering Sword Venerable Fudao inwardly gasped in surprise. Another expert, Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, stood tall and proud, continuing to describe just how powerful Sword Venerable Fudao's Sword Dao was. Inside the house, Guan couldn't help but smirk, finding the man's words quite pleasing to the ear. He also understood Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's intentions, but he would not take him as a disciple. It would mess up the seniority. However, giving pointers on Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's Sword Dao was an option. Guan put down his pen, stood up, and prepared to meet people. With so many important figures present, he couldn't stay cooped up and risk being impolite. Of course, the most important thing was he couldn't miss such an excellent opportunity to make a grand appearance. Guan quickly tidied up the desk and then descended the stairs. He threw a glance at Blood Prison Great Saint, who immediately rose and scuttled after him. Along the way, numerous cultivators and disciples greeted Guan, and he responded with a smile to each one. Elsewhere, Zhu Shi stepped out of the courtyard arranged for her by an accent, wanting to stroll around. Even from a great distance, she could see the starlight crowd around Gu in extremely conspicuous. When she recognized his true face, she was taken aback. How could it be him? Zhu Shi couldn't forget the enigmatic senior she had met on Mortal World Peak, initially thinking he had been toying with her. However, after she began cultivating the stepping path of Age's step, she came to understand the formidable power of this divine skill. Even after hundreds of years, she had not encountered a more potent skill than the stepping path of Age's step. At that moment, she suddenly relaxed. If it were this senior, perhaps he truly intended to take her as a disciple. Previously, she thought that Guan wanted to scheme against her, but now that she knew he was Sword Venerable Fudao, her worries evaporated like smoke and clouds. She saw Guan nodding to her with a smile, which flattered and startled her, so she hurriedly lifted her hand in salute. Guan did not approach, but was escorted by the crowd toward the dojo, which made Zhu Shi breathe a sigh of relief. Facing Guan in public still put a lot of pressure on her. Now, she began to look forward to the upcoming life in Medicine Valley and the grand ceremony mentioned by the disciples of the valley. Guan, up to this point, are you still unwilling to reveal who you are making an immortal? LV Batian asked with a smile as he walked beside Guan. The others followed with teasing comments. Although they were jesting with Guan, they all maintained proper decorum, not daring to offend him. Guan pretended to be astonished and asked, "How did you all find out? The news has already spread. Come on, tell me, who are you helping to become an immortal? Is it your disciple?" LV Batian urged. Even the current supreme sect, when faced with the immortal path realm, must make every effort to win them over. The most crucial point was that Guan was creating an immortal, which holds a fatal attraction for a sect. If they could create one immortal, they could create a second and third. Moreover, they all felt that Guan was about to elevate someone to immortality in one go, not just giving them an opportunity to grow gradually. Guan laughed and said, "The ancient hour is nearly upon us, don't worry." LV Batian was not content, but alas, no matter how much he pressed, Guan refused to give an answer. A figure flew from the horizon and swiftly landed in front of Guan. It was none other than LV Xian. Wearing a vestment robe crafted by Li Xiandao, LV Xian had an impressive demeanor, like an immortal lord descending to the mortal world, causing the surrounding cultivators to subconsciously make way. When LV Batian saw him, his eyes lit up, wondering if Guan was about to elevate his son. "That would be fantastic. Guan, come with me. Let's talk. What's there to discuss with these old geezers?" Xian spoke disrespectfully, immediately causing quite a few people to frown. Batian frowned and said sternly, "Presumptuous, have you not learned any manners following Li Xiandao?" As the crowd used sound transmission to communicate, their displeasure dissipated upon learning that Xian was Batian's son. Xian's fame was no small matter, and he was among the top talents of the supreme sect. Xian, who had already reached the Mahayana realm, had a presence even stronger than that of an ordinary Mahayana cultivator. Xian ignored Batian, grabbed Guan, and started walking outside. Guan could only apologize to the others before following Xian away. After they left, the crowd began to congratulate Batian. Although he gestured for them not to speculate wildly, the smile on his face could hardly be concealed. An ancient hour later, everyone gathered in the bustling loft area of the Third Medicine Valley. Guan stood on a hastily built platform, addressing the crowd. Looking down from the platform, the place was bursting with people. Zhu Shi, Su Jia, Wu Ju, Shun Jun, and others were also among the crowd, curious to see how Guan would create an immortal. I prepared a grand ceremony for this spring festival. I thought I had hidden it well, but the news somehow spread. "Yes, I am creating an immortal," Guan said with a smile, followed by good-natured laughter from below. Long Qing maintained a solemn face, pretending not to know who leaked the news. "Today, I want you all to witness the process of transcendence, and hope it helps with your future cultivation," Guan stated earnestly as he scanned the crowd. He saw Xiaoyu staring at him, and even deliberately winked at her. Unfortunately, she did not respond. At this moment, Xiaoyu was simply curious about how Guan was going to create an immortal. She even wished he would just start and spare them the idle chat. Guan spoke at length before finally getting to the point. He simply said, "Bull Demon King." As soon as his words ended, the Blood Prison Great Saint immediately leaped onto the stage from the side, proudly stepping towards Guan, enjoying everyone's gaze. The crowd below paid no attention to the Blood Prison Great Saint, assuming Guan had called him up for something unrelated to immortal creation. After all, what did a core formation realm demon creature have to do with becoming an immortal? Chapter 449. Is there a second person in the world? Blood Prison Great Saint arrived before Guan and reverently knelt down, as if he were about to prostrate himself. Seeing him maintaining such an attitude at this time warmed Guan's heart. His efforts in raising him had not been in vain. "His name is Bull Demon King." "Huh? Don't tell me there's also a son, Wukong?" "Huh? Don't underestimate him. He's quite cunning. Indeed, when I first touched his horns, he wanted to retaliate against me." "Shush, you can't speak about such things. Why would you send a bull to do it? To kill him as a part of the celebration for immortal creation?" The cultivators and disciples below spectated and speculated, some comments stirring the Blood Prison Great Saint's fur to stand on end in anger. Guan didn't mind it, for the Blood Prison Great Saint's attitude was inseparable from his own harsh words. Aside from Guan, nobody liked them, much like the white spirit rat. It was time to begin. That's what Guan thought, his eyes turning fierce. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Guan took out the fate-determining pen, allowing it to spin in his hand before gripping it firmly. The tip pointed at Blood Prison Great Saint. Everyone's gaze followed suit, falling upon Blood Prison Great Saint, unsure of what Guan was about to do. "Today, I shall let my mount transform into the immortal realm. Everyone, watch closely." Guan's voice sounded, echoing through the Third Medicine Valley. Upon hearing this, everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. He intends to elevate this demon bull to the immortal realm? Impossible. In that moment, even Zhu, Luo, Sword Monarch, and the white-robed elder furrowed their brows. Xiaoyu and Sun and Moon, Netherworld Emperor, likewise found it unbelievable. Their higher realms of existence made them acutely aware of how difficult it was to leap from the core formation realm to the nirvana realm. Even with great powers pouring in their essence or imparting cultivation levels, it was impossible. No matter how they looked at it, Blood Prison Great Saint didn't seem like a great power reincarnated. There were no traces of reincarnation tribulation's cause and effect, nor any signs of a hidden, stronger cultivation level. LV Batian was stunned, even found it ridiculous. Could this uncultured bull also achieve immortality? The crowd below fell silent, and before anyone could react, Guin wielded his pen, sprinkling ink onto the body of Blood Prison Great Saint. Instantly, the seal of path of returning primordial spirit within Blood Prison Great Saint dissipated, and he felt that long-lost power surge through him. His entire bovine body ignited. Primordial reincarnation skill, release. Blood Prison Great Saint roared inwardly. As he just released his Mahayana realm aura, his cultivation level skyrocketed, causing his presence to burst forth like a flood breaking free, reaching the heavens. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted from within him, forming a pillar of flames that shot into the clouds, dispersing the accumulating mists and spreading fiery waves across the sky, plunging the Third Medicine Valley quickly into crimson. Everyone looked up. Even Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, unable to remain composed. How is this possible? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's pupils quivered, a storm raging in his heart. Judging by Blood Prison Great Saint's surging aura, this demon was likely to surpass the Nirvana realm, from the core formation realm to a loose immortal in one go. How could this be? The path of cultivation could allow this? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch, glanced again at Blood Prison Great Saint atop the platform. Still, he detected no hint of reincarnation causality. Could this rascal have concealed his cultivation level? But that shouldn't be possible either. How could he not see even the slightest clue? Zhu Luo, Sword Monarch's mind, was in turmoil. The white-robed elder still trapped within the reincarnation tribulation also watched Blood Prison Great Saint in astonishment. Your Majesty, this is Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor turned to Ji Xiaoyu beside him, hoping she could provide an explanation. Ji Xiaoyu took a deep breath, slowly exhaling a phrase. Baffling indeed. Such fortuity is beyond our comprehension. Su Jie, who also had encountered Blood Prison Great Saint, stood dumbfounded. He, too, had dealt with Blood Prison Great Saint. Guin had wanted to prove himself because Blood Prison Great Saint scoffed at his genius demeanor, telling him that for all his talent, there were countless others far more formidable than him. So, Su Jie thought Guin looked down upon him and had Blood Prison Great Saint convey that attitude. Now, as he looked at Blood Prison Great Saint again, it suddenly dawned on him that Blood Prison Great Saint hadn't lied. The Nirvana realm seemed an eternity away for him, no matter how talented he was. Guin had easily created an immortal realm entity, plunging him into a sea of boundless confusion. Was he truly not a genius? Was he just better than the disciples of the Supreme Sect, amounting to nothing in reality? Another genius remained stunned. Zhu Shi. She considered herself well-informed, yet she had never heard of such a feat. How did he do it? How profound was his Tao level? LV Xian, after a brief shock, became excited, clenching his fists as though he were the one making a breakthrough. He was amazed by Gu An's methods, but the thought of being the only talent Gu and acknowledged made him glow with pride. Even with the capability to create immortals at will, Guin still recognized his talent. What did that mean? LV Xian's self-confidence soared. He puffed out his chest and began to look down on others with laughter. Could he truly be Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Wu Ju's eyes widened, his body stiffened to rigidity. He had worked so hard for his Tao level, only to have it surpassed by the Blood Prison Great Saint in an instant, which made him question his life. Shun Zhen's gaze shone brightly as she stared at Guin, her eyes filled with infatuation. She most admired the Sword Venerable Fu Dao, and her favorite peer and friend was Guin. Even without the identity of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, she sincerely admired Gu An's talent. When Gu An's identity coincided with that of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, Shun Zhen's admiration and fondness for Gu An reached its peak. The imposing aura of the blood prison great saint whipped up a gale that fluttered Gu An's robe and hair. He turned his head to look at the blood prison great saint. The corners of his mouth lifted into a smile. This scene, witnessed by the crowd below, made him seem so vigorous and high-spirited. Could there be a second person in the world capable of scribing immortals? Everyone was shocked by Gu An's methods, and the aura of the blood prison great saint disturbed the entire supreme sect as more and more cultivators flew toward the third medicine valley. Xianxia came back to his senses and immediately went to stop other disciples from coming. Gu An's methods were too unfathomable, and he felt they should not be exposed. Not only did he think this, but LV Batian and the other higher-ups shared the same view. If news of this were to spread, could the disciples continue to cultivate peacefully? Surely a large number of disciples would come seeking Gu An's favor upon hearing the news, and other sects would go crazy trying to please Gu, and LV Batian also flew into the sky to take charge of the situation. He turned his head in the air and looked toward Gu and standing on the platform, whose presence could not be overshadowed by the blood prison great saint's imposing aura. LV Batian suddenly felt a bit dazed. He felt that the supreme sect could not retain Guan, nor were they worthy of him. Without sword venerable Fu Dao, how many times would the supreme sect have been destroyed by now? Thinking this, LV Batian suddenly felt relieved. Why continue to suppress? Such an extraordinary event surely could not be hidden. Guan, do you disdain the position of sect leader because you will live longer than the supreme sect? LV Batian looked at Guan and sighed softly, his voice so low as if only he could hear it. Thunderous clouds rolled in from the horizon, gathering above his head, accumulating heavenly might, and casting a quick darkness over the land and sky. Amid the vast and mighty aura, the blood prison great saint slowly stood up, his fur bursting apart, his form changing. A blood-red robe appeared out of nowhere, wrapping around the bull's body before it had fully shape-shifted, aiding its transformation into human form. The bull's head shrank rapidly, revealing a handsome and unruly face, his arrogance even more pronounced than that of an Hao and LVCN. The once invincible blood prison great saint, who had dominated his own great heaven and earth, had returned. Underneath the mystic pure tree, a plump white spirit rat held a fruit, staring blankly at the figure of the blood prison great saint. The fruit fell to the ground unnoticed. An Xian stood at the edge of the platform, looking at the true form of the blood prison great saint, and secretly marveled. So, this is what he looks like? Or is he imitating Master? But no matter how I look at it, Master is more handsome. Even with that bull's head donning a handsome appearance, it still seems punchable. Feeling the quickly intensifying aura of the blood prison great saint, and Zin's competitive spirit was spurred. One day, she would become stronger than the blood prison great saint, and she would even surpass her senior brother. And how? The heavenly tribulation was about to arrive, and all the people in the valley were not frightened by its might. They all stared blankly at the blood prison great saint. It was unclear who spoke first, but the third medicine valley instantly became like a pot boiling over, the clamor bursting forth, threatening to overturn the heavens. How is that possible? Has the demon bull really become an immortal? He is not just a disciple of Sword Venerable Fu Dao. He is Sword Venerable Fu Dao. My heavens! How'd he do it? Could it be that this bull was always an immortal? Immortal my ass. I've known the Bull Demon King for 500 years, watching him nap every day. Can an immortal do that? That's right, this bull has indeed been around for a long time, not just a recent appearance. Everyone was immensely excited, fervently discussing the blood prison great saint, and Gu N's gaze turned towards the heavens, sensing a powerful presence rushing from the silent destruction domain. It was the aura of the heavenly demon, stronger than the Zhu Luo sword monarch, truly half a step into the Tao fruit realm. The heavenly demon emperor, interesting. Gu N's eyes sparkled, his thoughts playful. In the dim great hall, the sickly green candlelight flickered as if demons were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. The Annihilation God Emperor sat cross-legged on a large cauldron, surrounded by a misty fog that faintly revealed swirling ghosts. His face remained pitch black as if a black hole, his true features unseen. "Come in." The Annihilation God Emperor spoke, his tone indifferent. As his words fell, a surge of demonic chi bubbled from the darkness ahead, quickly approaching him. It was the Heavenly Demon Emperor. The Heavenly Demon Emperor stood in front of the cauldron, looking up at the Annihilation God Emperor perched above, and asked, "Divine Emperor, are you waiting for a descendant of the Dragon Clan?" The Annihilation God Emperor responded with a hum, his seated posture revealing nothing of his emotions. The Heavenly Demon Emperor asked, "If you suspect that person is in the great heavenly spirit land, why not eradicate the great heaven and earth directly? Wouldn't trading the lives of all its beings for the peace of the vast cosmos be worthwhile?" The Annihilation God Emperor's head tilted slightly, as if he were looking at the Heavenly Demon Emperor. The Heavenly Demon Emperor was not afraid and continued, "You are not a paragon of virtue. You have destroyed numerous great heavens and earth. Could it be that you do not actually wish to kill that person, perhaps even to protect him? It is said that the primordial ancestor of the Dragon Clan was not Emperor Long Xian, but his father, who was known as the Emperor of Heavenly Dragon. He founded the battle court, but swiftly fell. Emperor Long Xian was merely heir to his legacy. Moreover, I heard that Emperor Long Xian was your disciple. Is that so?" The Annihilation God Emperor fixed his gaze on the Heavenly Demon Emperor and said, "Heavenly Demon Emperor, though you have become an emperor, are you sure you want to provoke me?" Chapter 450, Chaos Heavenly Tao. Demon God Xianxia facing the threat of the Annihilation God Emperor. The Heavenly Demon Emperor showed a smile and said, "Divine Emperor, you should understand my meaning. If not for your promotion, how could I have today? It is because of this kindness that I wish to remind you of the cost of doing this." The Annihilation God Emperor looked down at him and asked, "Have you already defected to the battle court?" The Heavenly Demon Emperor replied, "The Disaster Demon Emperor did indeed seek me out, but the battle court cannot cross the boundary gate, and I have no need to defect. However, you are different. You don't belong to this universe and will leave sooner or later." The Annihilation God Emperor fell silent. The Heavenly Demon Emperor's eyes flickered as he said, "Why don't I help you eliminate that person, so you won't be seen as having failed Emperor Long Xian?" Boom! A terrifying aura burst forth from the Annihilation God Emperor's body, continuously impacting the Heavenly Demon Emperor and causing the demonic chi around him to disintegrate and reconvene. The Heavenly Demon Emperor slightly bowed his head, his face cast into darkness. "It seems you are not sure you can eradicate the great heavenly spirit land, and you want to rely on my strength," the Annihilation God Emperor's voice sounded. The Heavenly Demon Emperor took a deep breath and said, "Our Sky Demon Clan's existence is to eradicate the great heaven and earth of the Heavenly Tao. It is our clan's mission. If I do not do it, sooner or later I will turn to dust, and my path will be in vain. Nowadays, the great heavenly spirit land has the power of Xianyu, the sword Tao of the Hong Sword Heaven, and the unknown origin of the free immortal. I indeed do not have absolute confidence. Divine Emperor, although you have transcended, you still belong to the chaos. Such a stance destines you to be incompatible with the creatures of the heavenly Tao. The descendants of the Dragon Clan, by leveraging reincarnation and entering the heavenly Tao, have already stood against you." The Annihilation God Emperor retracted his aura, thought for a moment, and raised his right hand, gesturing slightly. A towering figure appeared from the darkness behind him, shrouded in flickering flames, its true face impossible to see. The Heavenly Demon Emperor's expression changed at the sight of this figure. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Demon God Xianhuang, how is it possible? How did you bring him?" The Annihilation God Emperor did not reply, but gently waved his hand. The demon god Xianxia opened a pair of eyes that resembled two suns of divine might, filled with an oppressing presence. In front of these eyes, the heavenly demon emperor seemed as insignificant as dust. The heavenly demon emperor took a deep breath, and a crazed and fierce expression spread across his face. With this power, the great heavenly spirit land will surely be eradicated. The supreme sect was basking in the festive atmosphere of the spring festival, while the Third Medicine Valley had been isolated by a formation. Within the Great Formation, the blood prison Great Saint was undergoing his tribulation, with violent heavenly lightning incessantly striking him. He hovered high in the air, twisting his neck without feeling any pain. On the contrary, he felt quite comfortable. Guan stood on a high platform, using his own Taoist intent to accelerate the blood prison Great Saint's heavenly tribulation. At this moment, the blood prison Great Saint had already stepped into the loose, immortal realm, adapting to the changes within his body. Everyone in the valley watched this scene, conversing among themselves. Invisibly, they each had their own realizations. This was because Guan's Taoist intent enveloped the entire Medicine Valley, letting everyone enjoy it. A grand celebration, naturally, couldn't just be to watch the blood prison Great Saint's breakthrough. Those who came to Medicine Valley were either friends with him or honored guests of the sect, considering it a gift for the spring festival. Many people believe that the Supreme Sect relied on Sword Venerable Fudao, but Guan felt that the Supreme Sect also helped him cover up a lot and indeed respected him at the higher levels. Even if there were calculations, they were outside the Third Medicine Valley and did not disturb his quiet cultivation. Over 1,000 years, the Supreme Sect had experienced bumps and turbulence, but it had always been able to correct its mistakes. Overall, Guan was quite satisfied with the Supreme Sect, which was why he was willing to offer such a grand gift. The pursuit of immortal cultivation and enlightenment are equally important. Many of you are busy with qi absorption cultivation, focusing on becoming stronger, which may become an obsession and lead to inner demons. My mount has been sitting in meditation for years, perceiving the natural world, and that is why he has become an immortal. Guan's voice rose, his words clearly reaching every person's ears, sinking them into contemplation. Guan wasn't just talking, although the blood prison Great Saint's strength had nothing to do with enlightening the path. Perceiving the natural world was also a route, and its potential was higher than that of qi absorption cultivation. If one can attain the Tao, mana will come naturally. The majority of cultivators busied themselves with qi absorption cultivation, neglecting the comprehension of nature. Their utilitarian mindset also made them restless, leading to extreme paths. What Guan spoke of was not enlightenment like Wuju's, but rather the comprehension of the great Tao. The great Tao is omnipresent, and even a trace of realization is worth more than 1,000 years of arduous cultivation. Even without enlightenment, occasional meditation could soothe the restlessness in one's heart, making the journey ahead more stable. There's an old Chinese saying that haste makes waste, which also applies to the pursuit of immortality. Guan spoke gently, guiding all the guests with his Tao. Even the strong figures like Zhu, Luo, Sword Monarch, and a man in white robe fell into deep thought. Su Jie stood among the crowd, feeling profoundly enlightened. In fact, over the years, he felt very impatient, with anger brewing in his heart. If not dispersed, it could become a heart demon in the future. Right now, listening to his master's voice, his heart fell into an unprecedented calm. It was a very comfortable sensation. Time flew swiftly. With Guan's help, the blood prison Great Saint's tribulation crossing process was extremely fast. As dusk arrived, the heavenly tribulation dissipated. The blood prison Great Saint successfully crossed the tribulation and became a loose, immortal realm first layer being. He was able to leap directly over the nirvana realm, thanks in large part to the medicinal herbs and elixirs that Guan had invested in him over the years. Feeling the powerful cultivation level of the loose, immortal realm, the blood prison Great Saint had an urge to let out a long howl, but he restrained himself. He descended from the sky and landed in front of Guin, knelt on one knee, and with a fist in palm, saluted, "Thank you, Master, for your grace. I will forever serve by your side." His voice was loud and clear, causing many people to awaken. This public declaration also confirmed that his becoming an immortal was a gift from Guin. The thunderclouds in the sky hadn't yet dispersed, and the edges of the clouds were tinged with a reddish glow as nightfall approached. Guin helped the blood-prisoned great saint up, and then turned to look at the audience below. Seeing that most of them had already awakened, he raised his hand and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is the New Year festival, time to drink and be merry." As his words fell, an Exant gestured with a wave of her hand, and a large number of Medicine Valley disciples started to move. Boom, boom, boom. Fireworks rose from the mountains at the edge of Medicine Valley, their thunderous sounds awakening everyone still immersed in the contemplation of the heavens and the earth. Suddenly awakened, they felt a sense of loss and even wished to recapture their previous experience. They started to seriously consider Guin's words about comprehending nature. The New Year's celebration at the Third Medicine Valley officially began, and Guin, accompanied by the blood-prisoned great saint, stepped off the stage. He immediately found himself in the spotlight, while many surrounded the blood-prisoned great saint, lavishing praises and asking him about his experience of becoming immortal. The blood-prisoned great saint stood with hands on hips, full of vigor. He spoke openly about the power of a loose immortal. His gaze turned to the distance, where he fixed his eyes on the white spirit wrapped beneath the mystic pure tree, frightening it so much that it immediately burrowed underground, vanishing from sight. The blood-prisoned great saint cracked a grin, his horned and blood-red hair making him look like an Azura in this world, his smile eerily thrilling. Chapter 451, Heavenly Tao Theory. The spring festival at the Third Medicine Valley was a great success, with everyone drinking through the night, sharing stories, and growing closer. Guin was quite busy that evening, and even though he appeared enthusiastic, he could sense that everyone was acting reserved around him, except for an Xian and Xianxia. Even Wuxia had changed from before. Perhaps this was the downside of being too powerful. Guin stood by the window, watching his friends leave one after the other. The morning sunlight glowed, making his departing friends seem as if they were leaving wrapped in a rosy dawn. After a while, Guin turned back, went to his desk, and began to write about mind cultivation because last night, LV Batian had expressed a desire to establish a method of heart cultivation and disseminate it throughout the Supreme Sect to help its disciples have a firmer path ahead. Guin hence offered many suggestions, such as uniform teaching of cultivation by the master to avoid neglecting any disciples due to a lack of close relations. The Supreme Sect no longer needed to intentionally cultivate geniuses. A strong foundation was more important, which required the effort of all disciples. A sect with geniuses might not be strong, but a sect where most disciples are outstanding was surely not weak. Guin created a 100-year cultivation education plan for the Supreme Sect. Every disciple upon entry would unconditionally receive 100 years of cultivation techniques and spell guidance from the sect unless they violated the rules, ensuring each disciple would possess notable strength and become eligible cultivators. LV Batian was moved by the plan. Although the investment would be substantial, if successful, the Supreme Sect would undoubtedly become a true Holy Land. Of course, the most crucial aspect was that the suggestion came from Sword Venerable Fudao. He believed that no one would dare to obstruct it. If resources were lacking, those families would surely rush to donate, meaning the plan would certainly succeed if they desired it. I wonder how long the Supreme Sect will last, but taking care of the majority of the disciples' lives is also amassing good karma. Guin murmured to himself, feeling content. He now cared more about intangible things than benefits. Having inherited many reincarnation lives and gained many insights, he wanted to distill insights from his own life. The path to the great Tao is long and full of obstacles, And understanding the great Tao isn't something that can be directly enhanced by lifespan, but with the ability to evolve through life, he had more time to comprehend the great Tao. A spring breeze blew in from the window, swaying a green flower on the small altar on the table. The green flower trembled, as if years were beckoning, reminding all living beings that youth, once gone, never returns. Time flies, and a century passed. One day, Guin strolled through the streets of the outer gate city, followed by the blood-prisoned great saint, whose shape-shifted form was tall and imposing, his fierce gaze capturing attention. Yet, many people looked not at him, but at Guin. People greeted Guin warmly along the way, and he nodded in response, while the disciples who had never met him asked others about him. That's the Valley Master of the Third Medicine Valley, Guin. It's suspected that he's Sword's venerable Fudao. What? He is the rumored Sword's venerable Fudao? It's unclear, but I remember he is supposed to be the disciple of Sword's venerable Fudao. Anyhow, he represents him. The 100-year mentorship was his proposal. You younger generations should thank him. Otherwise, entering the sect without talent would have made pursuing Taoist sorcery dependent on connections or fighting it out. The 100-year mentorship was his idea? Then he indeed deserves such treatment. We've all benefited from his grace. Wherever Guin went, nearby people discussed the 100-year mentorship. The Supreme Sect implemented this initiative swiftly, spreading it throughout the land and overseas. Even disciples from other sects praised the Supreme Sect for the great sect spirit, with some wanting to learn from it, but facing internal resistance. Within the same sect, not all those in power wanted their disciples to prosper, valuing their own interests more. The 100-year mentorship touched on these interests. How could they agree? For a time, the conflict between families and sects played out everywhere, some resulting in bloodshed, while others had undercurrents. The world was still in chaos, but Guin could not be concerned with the whole world. Managing the Supreme Sect was impressive enough. Name, Guin, lifespan, 1/100/3, 391, 514, 220, physique, mixed yuan, Dao, golden body, cultivation level, perfect Xian Yuan Zi, Zai, immortal realm. 33 billion years of lifespan. Guin felt very satisfied. Time seemed to be passing faster for him. He did not go to develop or expand Medicine Valley, or to seize more lifespans. It had to be done by his original self. Puppets and avatars would not suffice. In the absence of hatred, there was no need for him to focus all his energy on seizing lifespans. Moreover, the bigger his movements, the more likely he would draw greater crises. At present, the increase in his lifespan satisfied him. He could steadily acquire lifespan and still have time to enjoy life. Such an immortal cultivation life could not be more wonderful. Since the blood-prisoned great saint had recovered his cultivation level, he began to understand the pleasures Guin indulged in. A mundane life was not necessarily dull, and fighting and killing should not encompass all that immortal cultivation entailed. Seeing Guin enter the book collection hall, the blood-prisoned great saint didn't follow him in, but instead wandered around in front of the hall's entrance. With long horns on his head and draped in blood-colored hair, his presence attracted attention wherever he went. Though the Supreme Sect had many demon clan disciples, few demons possessed such an outstanding and sharp demeanor. He unabashedly displayed his loose, immortal aura, leaving others curious about his cultivation level. Within the Supreme Sect, even if one encountered someone from the Immortal Path realm, disciples would not panic because they believed that no Immortal Path powerhouse would dare cause trouble at the Supreme Sect. They were protected by true Immortal Path Supremes. This time, Guin came to the book collection hall not to donate books, but to buy them. The book collection hall was helping him collect rare books from across the world, and he did not refuse. With his Tao level, he could predict outcomes, but he had not done so. He preferred the feeling of flipping through the pages of a book. Even with power surpassing that of great heavenly spirit land, he kept as many mundane habits as possible. Over the years, in addition to the growth of his lifespan, he had gained a deeper understanding of fate and karma. He could wield two kinds of heavenly Tao and great Tao divine skills with even greater might. This was also the benefit of remaining a part of the secular world. Compared to deduction, interacting and living among people allowed for a better understanding of others' emotions and the realization of life. When the elders from the book collection hall knew of Gu An's arrival, they flocked to him, eagerly recommending the rare books each had found. Guan asked them to present their findings one by one without rush, as he planned to stay for an ancient hour. Hearing that Guan would stay for an ancient hour, everyone calmed down, and the smiles on their faces never faded. They began to recommend books in order of their seniority. Guan listened attentively, but the first few books did not attract him. "Brother Gu, this book I have is extraordinary. Its origin is unknown to anyone. It suddenly appeared overseas and has been praised by many. Some say this book can predict the future," said an elder while presenting a blue-covered book mysteriously. Guan looked at the book's cover and saw 3 words: Heavenly Tao Theory. Guan raised his hand and drew the book into his grasp. The elder was not surprised, accustomed to his methods, and continued to introduce the commotion that Heavenly Tao Theory had caused. Guan was captivated from the first page. Heavenly Tao. All living beings perish for the Heavenly Tao. The great Tao perishes for the Heavenly Tao. Was this a book criticizing the Heavenly Tao? Guan grew even more curious and continued to flip through, wanting to see how this book could predict the future. More than one elder had heard of Heavenly Tao Theory, and, according to them, there were only 9 true copies of Heavenly Tao Theory. The rest were imitations. To possess Heavenly Tao Theory was to gain extraordinary power, but it could also bring misfortune, leading to death and the annihilation of one's Tao, an unpredictable revival. After a long time, Guan closed the book and smiled. "This book is good. They'll take it. In the future, if there is more Heavenly Tao Theory, you can keep it for me." The elder beamed upon hearing this, patting his chest and readily agreeing. He did not request any compensation. To be on good terms with Guan was the greatest reward. To call oneself a friend of Guan within the supreme sect, who would dare to disrespect him? If someone dared to impersonate, cultivators would come knocking on their door. It was said that the supreme sect had established a dark hall, which included oversight of such matters to prevent anyone from tarnishing the reputations of Guan or Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan asked them to bring out all the books they had prepared for him. He couldn't waste their kindness. Finally, Guan left the book collection hall, with everyone accompanying him. Seeing Guan emerge, the Blood Prison Great Saint immediately hurried over. Guan glanced at him and said, "You are already a loose immortal. Don't bother with him." The Blood Prison Great Saint, who had just purchased a curious treasure, gave an awkward smile and coughed. "I was just playing with him. I see him as a kid. Why would I bully him?" The child he referred to was the white spirit rat. Chapter 452. Surpassing the 9 heavens of Immortal Path. After Guan spoke up, the Blood Prison Great Saint abandoned his plan to scare the white spirit rat. He wasn't upset. If Guan cared so much for the white spirit rat, he would naturally do the same for him. Guan continued wandering around the outer gate city until dusk, and before leaving, the Blood Prison Great Saint voluntarily transformed into a bull demon to carry him away. The Blood Prison Great Saint had not forgotten his duty as a mount, and although Guan told him it wasn't necessary, he insisted on doing it. He wasn't foolish. If Guan said he didn't need him to be a bull, and he actually believed it, Guan could easily find another bull to replace him the next day. Guan was very pleased with the Blood Prison Great Saint's attitude. He could guess what the Blood Prison Great Saint was thinking. Indeed, with Guan's current capabilities, finding a mount was easy, and he wouldn't even have to look for one himself. People would rush to offer one if they saw he needed it. Guan wouldn't force the Blood Prison Great Saint, but if the Blood Prison Great Saint wanted to stick by him, he wouldn't reject him either. At least by following him, his efforts wouldn't be in vain. Sitting on the back of the bull, with a breeze on his face, Guan took out the Heavenly Tao Theory again and continued to read. Although the book was a copy, through its words, Guan could feel a special Taoist intent. If it possessed Taoist intent, it likely meant its creator was in the Tao fruit realm. There were many great heaven and earth realms beyond the outer heaven, and Guan had even sensed the presence of the Taoist hidden immortal, though it was deeply hidden and fleeting. He hadn't yet encountered the Xian Yuan Xian. The heavenly Tao theory didn't just appear by chance. After deducing, Guan found that it descended around the world in the same year, indicating that some powerful entity had set its sights on the great heavenly spirit land. Now, there were more than 10 free immortals within the great heavenly spirit land. They fought subtly in the shadows, and though they occasionally met, they moved their combat to the outer heaven without disturbing the world situation. The emergence of another Taoist hidden immortal didn't worry Guan. It posed no threat. Besides, he had already started planning his next breakthrough. The Blood Prison Great Saint wasn't flying fast. By the time they reached the Third Medicine Valley, the moon had already risen. Upon landing, Guan didn't go inside. Instead, he walked towards a distant courtyard. The number of disciples in the Third Medicine Valley exceeding 5,000 had forced an Xian to establish a set of criteria for those who wish to stay. Thus, nowadays, the real challenge wasn't finishing one's training, but managing to remain. Have you always wanted to know the origins of your bloodline? Hearing this, most of Zhu Zai's panic dissipated. She cautiously approached the table and said, "Master, I have not stolen any medicinal herbs within the Third Medicine Valley." What she said was true because the treatments in the Third Medicine Valley were good. The words an Xian had previously spoken to her alone had spread, and many families were trying to win her over, thinking she might become the direct disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan said, "I know, so I never questioned you. Today I sought you out because this book, Heavenly Tao Theory, is extraordinary and could bring trouble to both you and the Third Medicine Valley." Upon hearing this, Zhu immediately took the Heavenly Tao Theory out. The real Heavenly Tao Theory was a red-covered book, almost as if it was stained with blood, emanating a sinister aura upon its appearance. Guan flicked his finger, and the Heavenly Tao Theory in Zhu Zai's hands flew out, landing on the table close to Guan's arm. Zhu thought to herself, what an impressive skill. Her cultivation level wasn't low, as she had only concealed her true strength. But in front of Guan, she felt her spiritual power was fragile and couldn't react in time. Guan said, "This book probably comes from beyond the outer heaven, and is the work of someone who surpassed the 9 heavens of the immortal path. It will continuously integrate with your causation and chi fortune. The more you use it, the more dependent you become, eventually becoming manipulated by it. To be unaffected, you need to surpass the free immortal, even surpass its creator. Surpass the 9 heavens of the immortal path?" Zhu, frightened to pallor, cautiously asked, "Master, what should I do?" Guan smiled and asked, "Do you like this book?" "I do know. I just like its power," Zhu honestly replied. She had mistakenly thought it was an immortal path's supreme treasure, which is why she had hidden it so carefully. Guan smiled and said, "I can let you keep it, but you mustn't use it. It'll teach you how to control its power, and if any entity tries to contact you, you must tell me." Zhu agreed without hesitation. She had no reason to side with the entity behind the Heavenly Tao Theory. Chapter 453. Demon God descends to the world. Guan saw that Zhu agreed, then pushed the Heavenly Tao Theory towards her. She did not pick it up immediately, but instead looked at Guan and asked, "Master, do you truly know my lineage?" Guan replied, "Actually, your background is quite ordinary, and there are no karmic entanglements entwined with you. Your talent is exceptional and occurs once in an era blessed by heaven and earth, known as the Tai Chu Swallowing Yuan Body." Tai Chu Swallowing Yuan Body. Upon hearing these 5 words, Zhu fell into a daze, inexplicably accepting this name as though awakening distant memories. Guan encouraged, "Cultivate diligently. One day, You will stand at the pinnacle of the immortal path and become the person you currently admire, or even surpass them. Hearing this, Xianxia wanted to ask, "Can I surpass you?" She was not ignorant of decorum to such an extent. She only dared to think it in her heart. Guan began to inquire about Zhu Zai's cultivation struggles. Lowering her guard, she started to discuss her cultivation woes. Meanwhile, Guan was deducing the karma and truth of the heavenly Tao theory. The heavenly Tao theory possessed the ability to toggle between reality and illusion. In battle, it could make the injuries she received turn unreal, as if she were unharmed, delaying the damage, while also being able to wield non-existent spells and divine skills to attack the enemy, making the enemy believe they sustained severe injuries when, in reality, they had not. This effect would persist for a while before disappearing. This power was different from karma. It was a very special power of the Tao. Currently, Guan had not yet researched this type of Tao, and he was quite intrigued by it. An hour later, Guan stood up to leave. "Master, keep the heavenly Tao theory for now. I will ask you for it when I need it. How does that sound?" Xianxia handed the heavenly Tao theory to Guan, speaking seriously. She was also reluctant to part with it, but after knowing the origin of the heavenly Tao theory, she felt apprehensive about the book, as if it burned to the touch. Most crucially, could Gu An's ability to discern the book's origin suggest that he might be stronger than the entity behind the book? Moreover, she could sense Gu An's interest in the heavenly Tao theory. Otherwise, he wouldn't have personally come to seek her out, and since Guan said he would cultivate her, why shouldn't she be generous? Guan smiled as he accepted the heavenly Tao theory, considering her quite sensible. After Guan had left, Xianxia closed her room door and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Not just due to her cautious nature. Anyone would feel frightened knowing such a mighty figure was watching over them. She went over their conversation in her mind, ensuring that she had not misspoken before she could fully relax. She resettled into meditation on her bed, her eyes drifting toward the window, pondering deeply with a distant look in her eyes. While she always afraid, she felt that her nature wasn't necessarily good, but she instinctively stayed alert around everyone, and her first reaction to potential troubles was to evade. But such is human nature. Even knowing one's flaws doesn't make them easy to amend. After a while, she redirected her focus, continuing her cultivation. After chatting with Xianxia, Guan would guide her in practicing the stepping path of Age's step every few days, spending other times either picking flowers and herbs or studying the powers of Tao in the heavenly Tao theory. He didn't absorb this power directly, but perceived its existence, seeking similar ones within the universe's unobservable Tao rules for enlightenment. By doing so, he could sense a pure power of the Tao, preventing any schemes from the entity behind the heavenly Tao theory. The universe was vast, with countless colorless and intangible types of Tao rules acting as its foundation, birthing the universe and all within it. Each Tao rule was vast and boundless. Although Guan had studied the Karma Tao and the Fate Tao, compared to one of these rules, they were vastly inferior. He could hardly imagine what realm would be potent enough to rival the Tao. When Guan began to comprehend the great Tao and reduced his idle play, time began to flow more swiftly. In the blink of an eye, another 45 years had passed. In the summer of this year, Guan arrived at the outer world cave of Heavenly Phoenix Mountain. The three demons, Xianxia, had already moved to the outer world cave, and the medicinal herbs from Xianxia Cave had also been transferred there. As the minor heaven and earth that Guan had opened up, the heaven and earth rules of the outer world cave had become more complete. The grotto heaven was rich in spiritual energy, which steadily increased the cultivation level of Xianxia and the others. Now, Xianxia had reached the 9th layer of the Mahayana realm and was ready to break through at any moment. Guan prepared to take her out for the tribulation crossing to prevent any harm to the outer world cave. Upon hearing that they could go out, Xianxia was thrilled. Tianqing and Tianbai also clamored to join, clinging to Guan's arms and acting coquettishly. Xianxia was charming and full of grace, her mature demeanor making her seem like an older sister, while Tianbai was more innocent but loved to act spoiled, always speaking in a whiny tone. The two sisters coordinated well, and Guan, with a softened heart, could only agree to take them out. Seeing their wishes fulfilled, Tian Yaoer sent them away and alone clutched Gu in his arm and asked, "Master, once I break through successfully, can I always stay with you?" She had been cultivating underground for nearly 1,000 years, having been only 17 when she arrived. Now she was 989 years old. How could she not be curious about the vast world outside? Guan replied, "That's not possible. If you leave, who will help me guard this grotto heaven? I cannot trust Tianqing and Tianbai with that." Hearing this, Tian Yaoer's face fell immediately, clearly disheartened. Guan changed his tone. "However, occasionally taking you out for a stroll isn't out of the question." "Thank you, master." Tian Yaoer's face lit up with a smile, promptly expressing her gratitude to Guan. Guan glanced at her. Despite her nearly 1,000 years of age, she still looked like a young girl. Perhaps she should experience the mundane world sooner or later. Otherwise, reaching a higher realm without Live's insights might make her journey arduous. He continued walking forward, Tian Yaoer by his side, while Tianqing and Tianbai leapt around, retaining their cat-like nature. As Guan chatted with Tian Yaoer, listening to her joyful laughter, his mood brightened as well. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly the ground trembled. The spiritual energy of the outer world cave began to surge chaotically, as if the apocalypse was upon them. Horrified, Tianqing and Tianbai quickly stopped, and Tian Yaoer frowned. She could sense an awful pressure coming from beyond the grotto heaven. This pressure was not fleeting, but continuous and increasingly terrifying. "Master, what's happening?" Tianqing looked at Guan, asking anxiously. Guan looked up at the sky, saying, "A demon god has arrived. The true calamity of the great heavenly spirit land is about to commence." Guan had already seen the demon god standing before the black city of the outer heaven, a city crafted by the annihilation god emperor, demon god Xianxia. Guan recognized the origin of this demon god at a glance. Indeed, in the inherited memories of Long Zhan, there were legends of the demon god Xianxia, exceedingly ancient. Long Zhan had only seen skeletal remains that emitted an endlessly vast aura. Beside the demon god, Xianxia, stood a demon with an extremely powerful aura, the heavenly demon emperor. Chapter 454. The extreme lifespan of heaven and earth. Gu and remembered the sky demon great emperor because of Ji Xiaoyu. The sky demon great emperor had a grudge with Ji Xiaoyu, and Ji Xiaoyu's original self had lost to him several times. When the sky demon great emperor descended near the great heavenly spirit land, Gu had divined the future and knew what would happen next. If he did not act, the sky demon great emperor would bring catastrophic disaster to the great heavenly spirit land. If he did act, more calamities would emerge in the future, possibly hastening the demise of the great heavenly spirit land. The fate of the great heavenly spirit land was due to the fortunes of great heaven and earth, which is to say, determined by heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao influences the will of all living beings, incites them towards aggression, and creates an environment for escalating conflict. Unless Gu could manipulate the will of all living beings, only then could he truly save the people of the great heavenly spirit land. But to do so would turn the people into puppets, resulting in a fate worse than death. Moreover, what heavenly Tao annihilated was the people of this era, not leaving the great heavenly spirit land devoid of life. Over the years, Gu An's prophecies had steadily improved, and he could even foresee the outcomes of his actions. Of course, he could not predict entities more powerful than himself. A demon god? What demon god? Is it an adversary of yours, master? Tianbai instinctively asked upon hearing Gu An's words. Outer World Cave was still trembling. Here, isolated by the powers of heaven and earth, it was still so much so. One could imagine the greater commotion in the mortal world outside. Guan replied, I have the power to protect myself, but not the whole world. Invisible and intangible forces beyond our grasp manipulate everything. Immortal cultivation is about breaking free from such powers. Upon hearing this, the three demons fell into contemplation. Tian Yaoer cautiously asked, Then can I still go out to break through? Guan smiled. Of course you can. In a few days, they'll take you there. Worry vanished from Tian Yaoer's face, replaced by excitement. She was too eager for her breakthrough into the Nirvana realm. Tianqing and Tian Bai were equally anticipating the Nirvana realm. Yet with lesser talent than Tian Yaoer, their breakthrough would require hundreds more years of waiting. Boom! The earth shook, and even the supreme sect was seized with panic. Xiaoyu stepped out of her house and looked up at the sky. Billows of black qi cascaded down from the zenith, sweeping across the sky with overwhelming oppressiveness, as if the demon world had descended. She sensed a presence and frowned. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared at her side, his expression solemn, and said, He has come. He did not need to name the one he referred to. Xiaoyu already knew. Inside Medicine Valley, everyone was discussing the strange phenomena in the sky. Disciples who had been meditating indoors came out, and chess players in the dojo lost interest in their game. Taking advantage of the situation, Nine-Finger Divine Lord altered the chessboard, then frowned at the sky. The surging black qi rolled tumultuously, like a sea pouring down from the sky, stunning all observers. The sound of a dragon's chant rose sharply and incessantly. Before any could see the dragon's shadow, other roars and piercing cries followed. In outer heaven, massive divine beasts had been battling for the great heavenly spirit land for 7 days, supported by the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty in a vast effort. Above the great heavenly spirit land, giant black whirlpools appeared one after another, with ceaseless heavenly demons flying out. In the distant beyond, a colossal and terrifying figure approached, wreathed in waves of fire akin to dragons coiling around him, each step capable of shaking the cosmos into void. He seemed like the most ancient demon god from the dawn of the universe, exuding an endless and vast aura. The tremors beneath his feet were visible to the naked eye, as if the Tao itself was being shaken. His appearance immediately brought to mind obliteration, striking extreme dread and awe. Whether it was cultivators of the Holy Court or immortal spirits of the Immortal Dynasty, looking at his arrival, they all instinctively felt terror. He was the demon god Xianxia. On his shoulder was yet another figure, appearing tiny as dust, indeed the Sky Demon Great Emperor. The Sky Demon Great Emperor stood with his arms folded across his chest, looking mockingly toward the great heavenly spirit land. A beam of golden light burst from within the great heavenly spirit land and came to a stop, revealing a figure. It was Xianxia Emperor, with a golden wheel floating behind him, emanating rays of brilliant golden light, more dazzling than the sun. Xianxia Emperor looked towards the distant demon god Xianxia, his eyes filled with wariness. He felt immense pressure. The Holy Minister, another free immortal, also made his appearance among the Holy Court's ranks. He was rapidly calculating, and the more he inferred, the grimmer his expression became. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while. Why'd I not see Xianxia? The voice of Sky Demon Great Emperor echoed through the void, reaching the ears of the great cultivators of the Holy Court and Immortal Dynasty, free immortals and divine thought true immortals, all showing a sudden change in expression, making it clear they all knew of the Sky Demon Great Emperor. Sky Demon Great Emperor, a holy god, ground his teeth and spoke, his expression unsightly to the extreme. Boom! Another thunderous roar erupted, deafening, startling the cultivators of the Holy Court and immortal spirits of the Immortal Dynasty to turn their heads. In the boundless and spectacular great heavenly spirit land, an explosion devastated a continent, scattering the sea of clouds, and terrible demonic chi surged like a fountain towards outer heaven. An immortal spirit of the immortal dynasty contorted his face hideously and gritted his teeth as he cursed. Sky demon, great sect. I've said it before, we should have joined forces with the holy court back then to wipe them out. With demon god Xianxia and the sky demon great emperor pressing in from the outside, and the sky demon great sect ravaging all living beings at the opportune moment, the holy court and the immortal dynasty both felt immense pressure. The countenance of Xianxia emperor also turned icy as his gaze fell upon the holy minister. The holy minister likewise looked at him. Their eyes met, and then both turned their attention to demon god Xianxia. Guan returned to the third medicine valley, walking towards the mouth of the valley. Looking up, it seemed as though dusk had arrived. Dark clouds churned and crimson glows spread, countless meteors trailing fire as they smashed into the distance. A poignant yet spectacular scene. The Supreme Sect had already activated the protective formation of the sect, and, at the edges of the Taitsong continent, a grand formation rose from the ground, a formation purchased from overseas by the Taitsong dynasty. It took 200 years to succeed in its deployment, but once complete, it could protect the entire Taitsong continent. Thanks to this action, Li Xiandao won the hearts of the people. No sooner had Guan entered Medicine Valley than he was surrounded by numerous disciples. Master, what's going on? Could it be that the conflicts between the great sects have reached our Taitsong continent? Foolishness, this commotion is clearly coming from outer heaven. It must be the heavenly demons attacking. Nothing like this has happened for hundreds of years. This time, the Supreme Sect might be affected. Master, your Tao level is high. Tell us. Faced with the disciples' barrage of questions, Guan replied, Indeed, it's a great tribulation of heaven and earth. What came before were just minor scuffles. This is the real calamity. But the Supreme Sect shouldn't be threatened in the short term. You should continue your cultivation. Marveling here is in vain. Hearing his words, the disciples all felt awkward and dispersed. Guan continued onwards, when Zhu Luo, sword monarch, approached him and asked, Senior, do you know the origin of the demon god from outer heaven? Guan stopped in his tracks and looked at him, asking, Do you know? Then tell me. Zhu Luo, sword monarch, took a deep breath and said, That is the demon god Xianxia. It is said that long ago, all the great heaven and earth in the universe belonged to the same great heaven and earth. Countless powerful beings existed back then. Treasure bodies emerged one after another. There was a race known as the divine race, and merely reaching adulthood granted them the power to destroy heaven and earth. The demon god Xianxia was a notable figure among the divine race. He is also one of the few whose corpse remained intact. From what I know, he fell under the control of the prohibited existence within the silent destruction domain, which means there is even a stronger being behind the sky demon great emperor. After finishing, he looked at Guan, but did not see any change in his expression. As expected, this senior knows everything. Zhu Luo, sword monarch's worries dissipated. He was not afraid of the sky demon great emperor, but after realizing the identity of the demon god Xianxia, he became afraid. No matter how confident he was, he did not consider himself an invincible being. Guan sighed and said, Heaven and earth have welcomed a calamity. Some seek to fulfill their mission, others seek to profit from the chaos. Tell me, when will such cycles of reincarnation ever end? After hearing this, Zhu Luo, sword monarch, was stunned. He pondered deeply over Guan's words. Guan was lamenting over the heavenly Tao. Humans have a limit to their lifespan, and it seemed so did heaven and earth. He had seen millions of scenarios of destruction for the great heavenly spirit land, with the outcomes still rapidly increasing. Zhu Luo, sword monarch, had not considered the heavenly Tao. He thought that Guan was expressing dissatisfaction with the beings behind the demon god Xianxia. Beyond the game of chess, each chess player is also a chess piece. If your sword Tao wishes to ascend to a higher level, you must forge your own path, independent of any Tao. Guan left those words behind and continued towards his loft. Zhu Luo, sword monarch, furrowed his brows, considering how difficult it was to forge one's own path. Not everyone was the sword saint ancestor. His holy heart, Sword Dao, did indeed count as his own path. He had once visited the Sword Dao River, where the holy heart, Sword Dao, existed eternally, coexisting with the great Dao. Despite his constant claims of wanting to surpass the holy heart, Sword Dao, he knew in his heart how far he was from it. He merely wanted to use the holy heart, Sword Dao, to break the shackles on his path of cultivation. He looked towards the retreating figure of Guan, his eyes brimming with curiosity. The great heavenly spirit land was about to turn to dust. What would this being, who had surpassed the free immortal, do? Would he intervene to protect, or would he distance himself from the strife? Turning his head to look at the disciples in the valley, a premonition told him that Guan would not forsake everything here. This was his observation from staying in the Third Medicine Valley for so many years. Guan arrived at the base of the building, noticing Xianxia and Sun and Moon, Netherworld Emperor, still engaged in observation. He raised his hand to greet them. Xianxia looked at Guan and said, "It seems this life of mine is coming to an end." Guan stopped and asked with surprise, "Why? You're not from the great heavenly spirit land, so you shouldn't feel such a great sense of responsibility, right?" Xianxia replied, "The Sky Demon Great Emperor is a sworn enemy of my original self. When he appears, the power of the primordial Taoist talisman also stirs, eager for a confrontation." The Sun and Moon, Netherworld Emperor, stood by, silent. He had long hoped for Xianxia to end this life, but the differences in seniority kept him from acting rashly. Guan narrowed his eyes, asking, "Do you have any regrets or wishes then?" There was no sadness in Xiaoyu's eyes, only calm. She looked at Guan and asked, "In this life and the previous one, am I different to you?" Guan thought of Xiaoyu's attitude towards him in this life. He couldn't clearly tell if she was just acting superbly or if her feelings were genuine. He didn't ponder further and turned towards the stairs. The sky continuously streaked with shooting stars. Strong winds consistently approached from afar, and the whole Third Medicine Valley was inundated with noise, the atmosphere filled with a tense and frightening aura. Although the Taitsong continent had temporarily not been affected, the territories overseas were already enveloped in turmoil. The Sky Demon Great Sect swept across all lands, numerous transport barriers emerging, and hordes of sky demons directly descended upon the earth, killing every living spirit they encountered, be it human or demon. From above, outer heaven, observing the great heavenly spirit land, it was akin to a magnificent scroll upon which ink spots continuously emerged and expanded. Simultaneously, demon god Xianhuang had already arrived near the great heavenly spirit land, and up ahead, 7 free immortals appeared. Xianxia Emperor, Holy Minister, Ancient Immortal Emperor, Saint Ancestor, and 3 free immortals who had returned from outer heaven. Even though they were all in the same great realm, the 7 free immortals felt immense pressure. The oppressive aura of demon god Xianhuang was simply too strong. So strong it made them feel as though they faced a being from a higher realm. Demon god Xianhuang truly is a rarity across the ages. To die at his hand is not a meaningless cultivation life, Saint Ancestor exclaimed, stroking his beard and laughing heartily, fearless. But not all free immortals could sport such nonchalance. Many were tense, each summoning their own immortal path's supreme treasures with grand and shocking auras. Behind them, the cultivators of Holy Court and Immortal Dynasty were locked in battle with the heavenly demons, now fully united against the foreign enemy after countless years of strife. Some fled, but many chose to fight to the death, defending the great heavenly spirit land. 2 days later, at midday, the sky remained dark and the black clouds rolled heavily. Zhu Luo, sword monarch, meditated under a tree, gazing into the distance, deep in thought. Xianxia, dressed in blue, approached Zhu Luo, sword monarch, bowed respectfully, and said, "Senior, thank you for your guidance all these years. I am prepared to join my sect in the campaign, unsure if I will return. I have not yet repaid you for your teachings. I can only come to pay my respects beforehand." Indeed, go. A world in chaos is a golden age for true talents. With the natural order upturned, as long as you survive, you will be able to seize more opportunities for cultivation, replied Zhu Luo, sword monarch. Xianxia smiled, thanked him once more, and without any fake sentiment, turned and left. Zhu Luo, sword monarch, was indifferent to his life or death. The words spoken were out of respect for Guan. Xianxia was just one example. Although the Taizong continent was far from the turmoils, leading the righteous path sects like the Supreme Sect agreed in short order to launch an expedition overseas to battle demons and contribute to protecting the world. When LV Baitian issued the recruitment edict, all members of the sect were excited, proud to be part of the Supreme Sect. Which disciple of the righteous path wouldn't wish to save the world? Facing such a catastrophe, the Supreme Sect's readiness to strike was enough to inspire 9/10 of the disciples, even sparking in some the fervor to fight to the death for the cause. The Third Medicine Valley was not conscripted since it primarily cultivated medicinal herbs. Nevertheless, Guan also offered his disciples the choice. They could join if they wished, but must think it through themselves. He, for one, would not intervene unless the enemy reached the Taizong continent. After Guan spoke, more than 500 disciples expressed their desire to join the Supreme Sect in the campaign. Many others were observant, and only a few had no interest in leaving. That day, Guan left the Third Medicine Valley alone, refusing to let Blood Prison Great Saint accompany him. He arrived at the Outer World Cave, took the three girls Xianxia, and in a single step crossed overseas to a remote island far from the Taizong continent. Standing on the island, Xianxia and the two other girls could see the sky in all directions churning with demonic qi, as if they were in the middle of the demon world. Having not come out for nearly 1,000 years, they found everything novel. In half an hour, the tribulation will begin. You may roam the island, said Guan, his gaze then shifting toward the distant sky. It wasn't demon god Xianhuang who had made a move yet, but the sky demon emperor, who, with his strength alone, was suppressing 7 major free immortals, showing overwhelming power. It was deliberate of the sky demon emperor. Guan could feel the morale of the demon side continually rising, while the Holy Court and Immortal Dynasty, after 2 days of bloody combat, were losing their will to fight and now struggled out of instinct. Guan noticed that the layer of heavenly Tao light in the outer sky was weakening, sparking his interest. Will the aura of the silent destruction domain devour the heavenly Tao destiny? Could it be that the battle between the great heaven and earth is a struggle between the silent destruction domain and the heavenly Tao? His gaze traveled through the boundless battlefield and landed on the remote universe's Black City, curious about what the Annihilation God Emperor intended to do. Chapter 456. The most reliable existence an hour quickly passed, and Xianxia came back to Gu An's side with her 2 companions. Master, how should I go through my tribulation? I feel nothing right now. Xianxia said coyly, not even daring to meet Gu An's gaze. The master brought her here to break through, but she hadn't caught the feeling of breakthrough. How embarrassing. The fact she hadn't spoken earlier was that she wanted to take this opportunity to see the world outside. Guan smiled and said, "No worries, just find a place to stand." Upon hearing this, Xianxia was overjoyed, quickly thanked him, and then walked toward the empty ground in front. Tianqing and Tianbai stood behind Guan, not daring to disturb him, whispering quietly among themselves about Tianyao's impending breakthrough. Soon, Tianyao chose her spot. She stood on the empty ground, looking at Guan with nervousness and anticipation. Immediately, Guan waved his sleeve, and a breeze rushed towards Xianxia, making her skirt flutter, outlining her perfect body curves. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth surged abruptly, almost drowning Xianxia. In that instant, Xianxia felt a choking sensation, but it vanished in a flash. Right after, the demonic power within her started to flow into her demon core. Boom! A thunderbolt suddenly appeared, its booming sound tearing through all clamor in the world, startling Tianqing and Tianbai, who looked up. The thunderbolt left an afterimage in the sky, with thunderclouds beginning to form around it. The clouds of the heavenly tribulation were denser and more oppressive than demonic clouds. Tianxia looked up, her eyes revealing a trace of fear. This heavenly tribulation was clearly different from the one she had crossed before, but she instinctively looked at Gu, and seeing him standing in the distance, her heart immediately settled. The heavenly tribulation was about to begin. She must reach the Nirvana realm and not disappoint her master. She looked at the sky again, her eyes no longer showing fear, only excitement. Once upon a time, the Heaven Phoenix Demon Mother of the Unification Realm had been the most terrifying being in her eyes, but now she had far surpassed her, continuing to chase higher realms. All this was bestowed by her master. For nearly 1,000 years, the master had not mistreated her. She only needed to take care of medicinal herbs, which the master himself had collected. She had always wanted to repay Guin, but her strength was not enough. Maybe when she reached the Nirvana realm, she would be qualified to help her master. Over an endless ocean, waves crashed against a lone mountain, on top of which stood a figure in black clothes. It was Leah. Leah looked up at the sky. Although he couldn't see beyond it, he could feel a tremendous pressure descending from above, even oppressing him. When will I be able to achieve the Nirvana realm? Without entering the immortal path, I am merely an ant, Leah murmured, furrowing his brows. Recently, he heard the name Hao, and Hao had entered the Nirvana realm and even defeated loose immortals, now becoming a celebrated figure throughout the world. Leah, although at the Mayana cultivation level, was still far from the Nirvana realm. He increasingly felt the struggle. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't catch up with Hao, a sentiment that distressed him deeply. He then thought of Zhang Buku. If Zhang Buku had stayed in the great heavenly spirit land, he might have also become famous worldwide. Lia's thoughts drifted, his gaze becoming distant. Standing on his shoulder, divine exotic immortal spirit laughed and said, "You're so young. What's there to worry about?" Having been together so long, they had formed a bond, so divine exotic immortal spirit communicated with Gu and through her heart's voice, revealing Li Ya's desires. However, Guin did not respond to it, and it felt it wasn't appropriate to say more. After all, its master was Guin, and Liu was just a junior it took care of. Leah took a deep breath and said, "Are you telling the truth? Can divine exotic city really transform a heavenly demon into a divine ghost with a strange soul?" The power of divine exotic city was still too sinister, causing him to hesitate to kill more people. But if it was a heavenly demon, then he would not feel burdened. Upon hearing this, the divine exotic immortal spirit quickly nodded and said, "Of course, by turning them into divine ghosts with strange souls, you are actually saving all living beings." After listening, Li Ya's lips curled into a smile, and he laughed. "Since that is the case, I must go then. You're right, I'm still young. Being slightly behind temporarily means nothing. Who will be stronger or weaker after 1,000 years or 10,000 years? Who can tell?" He leaped up, transforming into a streak of sword light, speeding towards the distance. The divine, exotic, immortal spirit stood on Li Ya's shoulder, gazing at his profile, and suddenly felt he had an extraordinary aura. His talent did not seem dazzling, but there was a tenacity about him that made him appear remarkable. Perhaps after 10,000 years, this young man could truly become a renowned figure throughout the world. Thinking so, the divine, exotic, immortal spirit turned its thoughts to its own master. Where would the master be in 10,000 years? No, By that time, it must stay with the master, lest the master really does give it away to this young man. The divine, exotic, immortal spirit shuddered, shook its head, and looked forward again, its little fist clenched, brimming with fighting spirit, yet appearing somewhat naive. Violent winds surged within the universe, an anomaly created by the rampant spiritual energy. The heavenly demon Great Emperor landed back on the shoulder of demon god Xianxia, just like the divine, exotic, immortal spirit on Li Ya's shoulder. He looked ahead at the 7 free immortals and laughed. "Gentlemen, enough of the chaos. Are you ready to die?" Upon hearing this, Xianxia Emperor and the others prepared for battle, not daring to take it lightly. They had fought until now and could see no chance of victory, but they could not retreat. They could only keep defending, even if it was just for a moment longer. "Your Majesty, where exactly are you?" Holy Minister gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with unwillingness. At this moment, not only the people of the Holy Court were thinking of Xianxia, but also Xianxia Emperor was thinking of Xianxia. Xianxia Emperor had to admit that in defending against foreign enemies, Xianxia was the most reliable. He also thought of Guan, but he knew Guan would not intervene unless the enemy confronted Guan directly. In his view, Guan had come from outer heaven, was an otherworldly great power that had secluded himself here, and had no obligation to guard the great heavenly spirit land. Just then, the aura of demon god Xianxia changed, and he opened his mouth, a scorching breath emerging from it, his surrounding black aura dispersing, gradually revealing his true form. He was bare-chested, his body human-like, but his chest bore a mouth full of sharp teeth, his mouth's darkness acting like a gateway to the abyss, chilling to the bone. His face ferocious, eyes pitch-black with occasional glimmers of blood-red pupils, his skin appearing scorched, his hair flowing, and upon a closer look, each hair strand resembled a dragon snake with black dragon heads at the tips, relentlessly emitting a fiery aura. His waist encircled by a bone dragon, his legs sturdy as pillars that could not be shaken, wrapped in flowing demonic chi till the knee, his feet unseen. When demon god Xianxia opened his mouth, the pressure on the 7 free immortals doubled. "Gentlemen, let's all out fight." Saint Ancestor spoke, his tone grave. The other free immortals could also feel the terrifying power accumulating in demon god Xianxia. Demon god Xianxia was facing the great heavenly spirit land. If they moved aside, the beings of great heavenly spirit land would face annihilation. Chapter 457, Beyond the Free Immortal Realm. Boom. 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 Thunderstorms constantly struck down, assaulting Tian Yaoer, who countered with her demonic power, her body trembling, barely holding on. "Give it your all, and if you can't bear it, they'll step in." Gu An's voice reached her, slightly calming Tian Yaoer's heart. After all, Tian Yaoer had accompanied him for 1,000 years. He couldn't bear to test her, and thus spoke to comfort her directly. "It will be different for An Hao and Yang Jian." Cough, cough. "Am I, as her master, somewhat biased?" Guan thought so, feeling a bit guilty. He instinctively looked toward the distant An Hao, who was battling fiercely with the warriors of the Sky Demon Great Sect, moving through the battlefield with awe-inspiring valor. Yes, that's how a male disciple should be tempered. Guan, noticing that the tribulation was still in its early stages, began to survey the world with his divine thought. He didn't want to interfere too much with this catastrophe. He just wanted to wait for the tribulation to end, protect those he cared about, and then step into a new epoch. Because even if he interfered, new calamities would arise, and continuous meddling would only lead to more brutal outcomes. However, seeing the suffering mortals in the world, Guan felt somewhat reluctant. He was indifferent to the deaths of cultivators and demons, as those beings at least possessed the power to resist fate and simply failed. However, the common folk, those without cultivation levels, lacked even the power to resist. He saw two Nirvana realm great cultivators in combat, their residual power too strong, a blazing fire falling to the mortal world, directly burning alive hundreds of thousands in a town, their screams turning the area into a hell on earth. Guin sighed, resigning himself. His gaze hardened, and the sea of fire instantly dispersed, the unburned survivors quickly freed from their burns. Guin didn't seek revenge for them. Saving them was already fortunate. Maybe it's a good chance to grab some lifespan. Guin thought, not out of saintly compassion, but to take the heavenly demon's lifespans amidst the chaos. Yes, that was the plan. Guin's divine thought directly enveloped the great heavenly spirit land, and as those heavenly demons were about to be slain, his divine thought would immediately strike, severing their last thread of life. Various prompts appeared before his eyes. If he encountered mortals attacked by heavenly demons, he would also directly eliminate those demons, regardless of whether there were cultivators around. As the tribulation progressed to a certain stage, Xianxia's aura began to rise, and Guin's lifespan also rapidly increased. Every second, more mortals were saved by him, and even more heavenly demons died beneath his divine thought. In the midst of crossing the tribulation, Xianxia suddenly sensed something, looked up, and her eyes widened in shock. Not just her, but Tianqing and Tianbai felt the same. They saw a wave of fire piercing through the rolling thunderclouds, unstoppable, descending with the power to annihilate, causing all three women to tremble with fear, feeling as if the sky were collapsing. Guin suddenly swung his sleeve, dispersing the fire wave in the sky, then said, "Focus on breaking through and feel the transformation brought by nirvana." Tianxiawer came back to her senses and immediately closed her eyes to sense the changes in her body. Tianbai muttered, "How strong was that flame just now?" "I'm not sure, but it was definitely beyond our imagination," Tianqing responded, her gaze fixed on Guin's back, her eyes filled with admiration. At the same time, outer heaven, demon god Xianxia strode toward the great heavenly spirit land. Unstoppable, flames continuously erupting from his mouth, his lower half enshrouded in rolling black mist, making him appear even more terrifying. In front of him, there was no longer any sign of the free immortals, and the cultivators of the Holy Court and immortals of the Immortal Dynasty were completely despairing, undergoing a massacre. The great heavenly spirit land seemed as if its fate had run out, the heavenly light layer that enveloped the world fluctuating between brightness and darkness, only 3 out of the 7 divine beasts from the sun remaining, their presence barely detectable, clearly on their last legs. The heavenly demon emperor's lips curved upwards, and he said, "Descend upon the mortal world." As his words fell, demon god Xianxia suddenly leapt up, like Mount Tai bearing down, plunging toward the great heavenly spirit land, scattering the sea of clouds along his path, forming an expansive ring of shockwaves. A thunderous roar resounded across heaven and earth. Demon god Xianxia crashed onto a continent, the earth instantly shattering, fierce winds sweeping rocks and trees in all directions. From high above, the expansive continent showed spiderweb-like cracks, with firelight appearing within the depths of the cracks, as if magma was about to burst forth. Standing on the continent, demon god Xianxia appeared as though standing on a small island, his towering figure visible from any corner of the continent. The heavenly demon emperor stood on demon god Zhanhuang's shoulder, twisted his neck, soared away, and flew towards a distance, meanwhile commanding demon god Xianxia, "Exterminate the creatures of this great heaven and earth, try to preserve the world itself." Demon god Xianxia immediately looked up, emitting a sky-shaking roar. Roar! This roar intensified the fear for beings trapped in dire straits. Even the disciples far in the third medicine valley of the Supreme Sect were startled, all turning their heads to see where the sound came from and what kind of entity had made it. Xianxia, who was meditating under the mystic pure tree, furrowed her brows, wondering if her master, who had gone out today, might be going to battle such a demon. The roar of demon god Xianxia instilled fear in everyone. An Xin felt as though she were in a cold cellar, her whole body chilled, as if she were about to face the most terrifying existence in the world. The declaration of war from demon god Xianxia unsettled all the powers in the great heavenly spirit land. After leaving demon god Xianxia, the heavenly demon emperor flew in the high sky, holding a black mirror as if searching for something, his gaze sweeping across heaven and earth. Suddenly, he noticed something and turned his head, then vanished from a spot. The next second, he arrived on an island, following his gaze, which was fixed on Xianxia, who was enveloped by intense thunder. Further away were three figures, Guin, Xianxia, and Tianbai. Nirvana tribulation. This cultivation technique is not simple, murmured the heavenly demon emperor as he stood on a rock, quietly observing Tianxia. Tianqing's gaze suddenly caught sight of him. Her beautiful eyes widened at the sight of the heavenly demon emperor. He looked menacing, exuding an extreme sense of danger. She instinctively grabbed Guin's arm and whispered, "Master, someone has come." Guin glanced at the heavenly demon emperor. Heavenly demon emperor, free immortal realm 9 layers 239,709, 201/500, 000/999, 999, 999, pure ages, all nines. It seemed this being truly was a rare, fortunate existence blessed by heaven and earth. Feeling Guin's gaze, the heavenly demon emperor's lips curled into a smile. In an instant, he moved 100 yards to appear right beside Guin, startling Tianqing and Tianbai, who instinctively shrank back. Just as the heavenly demon emperor was about to speak, Guin suddenly swung his sleeve. Boom! In an instant, the heavenly demon emperor was reduced to ash, and a gust swept back, lifting a dust dragon into the air. The sound of thunder continued to echo, while Tianqing and Tianbai stood stunned. Tianxia, hearing the commotion, opened her eyes and looked toward the trio, facing one side. She couldn't help but ask, "Master, what happened?" Guin turned to her and said, "Nothing much, just a mosquito trying to bite me." "A mosquito?" Tianxia looked skeptical, feeling that Guin was joking. At that moment, a prompt appeared in front of Guin. "You have successfully seized 26,708,213 years of lifespan from the heavenly demon emperor, free immortal realm 9 layers. Over 20 million years of lifespan, not bad. Worthy of a free immortal." Guin smiled satisfactorily. Eradicating the heavenly demon emperor had little impact on the progression of heaven and earth. The real threat was demon god Xianxia. Demon god Xianxia had already begun a massive slaughter. Guin seized this opportunity to accelerate his harvesting of demons, making way for the forces of heaven and earth to combat demon god Xianxia. Since demon god Xianxia was not a living spirit, killing him would not release a lifespan. Thus Guin had no interest in him. Boom! A golden thunderbolt struck down, resembling a golden dragon, its majestic power formidable. Guin's gaze locked onto Tianxia as a faint golden light burst from her, resisting the attack of the golden thunder. Tianxia felt her heart skip a beat and looked up instinctively, not seeing the golden thunder anymore. "Master, about that guy just now," Tianqing began cautiously. She didn't know how to express it. The sudden appearance of the heavenly demon emperor had almost scared her to death. Unexpectedly, with a wave of their master's sleeve, the heavenly demon emperor was obliterated. Tianbai, more daring, directly asked, "Master, what realm was that man from?" Guin responded nonchalantly, "Free immortal." "What realm is free immortal? How many levels higher than nirvana?" Tianbei's eyes shone with excitement as she asked. Guin glanced at her and snorted, "You'll have to figure that out yourself." Tianbai was lost in infinite possibilities. She aspired to reach the free, immortal realm in the future, No, to surpass it. Otherwise, she would seem insignificant before her master. Chapter 458, an even more terrifying existence, the words free immortal deeply embedded themselves in the hearts of Tianqing and Tianbai, who both aspired to reach this goal. It was only many years later that they realized how unattainable the free immortal truly was. Although Tianyaoer was curious about what had just happened, her current priority was to make a breakthrough. She closed her eyes, adjusted her mindset, and re-entered a state of enlightenment. The heavenly tribulation continued. The heavenly demon Great Emperor, who had suppressed the 7 free immortals, died silently without anyone noticing, as if he had never been to the great heavenly spirit land. As Guan watched Tianyaoer undergo her tribulation crossing, he extended his divine thought throughout the world, continuing to expel demons and, incidentally, to save mortal spirits. The roar of demon god Xianxia constantly resounded, killing countless beings with his power every moment. More and more sects began rushing to where demon god Xianxia was located. Despite the terrifying aura of demon god Xianxia, they had to confront him to protect the great heavenly spirit land. It was their home, and they had no choice. Guan noticed that the free immortals like the Xianxia Emperor were not dead, but had all gathered in one place, apparently discussing something. In a valley, 7 free immortals were meditating on the grass, their auras weak, some even engulfed in flames, looking utterly bedraggled. The saint ancestor opened his eyes and looked at an elderly man in white robes standing with his back to them, and asked, "Who are you, sir, and why have you saved us? You likely do not belong to the great heavenly spirit land." He was the oldest among the 7 free immortals and had never seen this white-robed elder before, which led him to this conclusion. This white-robed elder was indeed the reincarnator who had once visited the Third Medicine Valley and had faced the Zhu Luo sword monarch. Without turning around, the white-robed elder said leisurely, "The world is vast, and even free immortals cannot see everything clearly. I saved you because I have some connection with the great heavenly spirit land. I have deduced countless times and seen no hope. Perhaps heavenly Tao intends to cleanse the mortal world, and the silent destruction domain seeks to exploit the weakness. You had better leave early and seek other paths." At these words, the free immortals' faces changed. The ancient immortal emperor spoke with a heavy tone. "Senior can save us from the hands of demon god Xianxia. But divine skills are surely beyond our imagination. If the great heavenly spirit land is destroyed, where can we go? Although there are many realms, they're all guarded by great powers. Can you point out a path of survival for us?" The other free immortals echoed his plea, as they were bound by the chief fortune of the Holy Court or the Immortal Dynasty. If the great heavenly spirit land were destroyed and chief fortune dissipated, their cultivation levels would severely drop, or worse, they would perish altogether. This was also why, despite the Holy Court's strength, they could not uproot the Immortal Dynasty as it was blessed by the heavenly chief fortune. The white-robed elder, with his back still turned to them, shook his head and said, "You do not understand what you are facing. Whether the Sky Demon Clan or forces from Xianyu, they are not the main cause of the destruction of the great heavenly spirit land. They are merely opportunists." These words silenced the free immortals. Having lived for so many years, how could they not be aware of the existence of heavenly Tao and the similar trials recounted in ancient legends? When heavenly Tao wanted to reset the world, it would bring various calamities. After a long while, the Xianxia Emperor stared at the white-robed elder, breaking the silence, and asked, "Then, Senior, what are you plotting?" The white-robed elder turned around, looked at him, and said, "I am looking for someone." "Who? I cannot tell you." The white-robed elder's response made the Xianxia Emperor furrow his brows. He thought of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, as there had been many powerful beings from outer heaven in recent years, Were they all searching for some specific entity? Roar. The roar of demon god, Xianxia, echoed from afar again, this time more strained, clearly attacked by someone. A smile appeared on the face of the white-robed elder as he said, "Stop trying to challenge demon god Xianxia. None of you are his match, and he is backed by an even more transcendent existence. Even if you somehow manage to eliminate him, it will only provoke an even more terrifying calamity, and then I can only flee." An even more terrifying existence? Upon hearing this, all the free immortals turned pale. If demon god Xianxia alone was enough to drive them to despair, what kind of being could possibly be orchestrating behind him? Does Senior recognize Sword Venerable Fudao? One of the free immortals could not help but ask. Sword Venerable Fudao's name had long resonated across the world, but because he seldom acted recklessly, he was rarely mentioned. Yet for higher-level cultivators, it was difficult to ignore his presence. Upon hearing the name Sword Venerable Fudao, the white-robed elder's expression subtly changed. He replied, "I do not know him, but I have once witnessed his elegance. He is also a being transcending the 9 heavens of Immortal Path. It is best for you to mention him, lest to avoid getting involved in great cause and effect. As for asking him to take action, that is even less advisable, as any adversary you face afterward would likely be almost as formidable as he is." The free immortals completely lost hope and looked up in bewilderment. The heavy black clouds in the sky were oppressive, obscuring the sun and leaving no hope in sight. Several ancient hours later, with the help of Guan, Xianxia successfully crossed her tribulation. In her overwhelming excitement, her clothes burst open, startling Guan, who immediately used his mana to envelop her, preventing her true form from being exposed. Guan suddenly noticed that the corners of Xianxia's mouth were slightly raised and thought to himself, could it be that she did this on purpose? He was a true gentleman and would not look more than necessary. Moreover, with his cultivation level, a single glance was unforgettable. Tianqing and Tianbai were also observing Guan's expression. Seeing that his face remained unchanged, the two women began to communicate through telepathy. "Do you think Master likes it? He probably doesn't like it. He didn't even react. The less reaction he shows, the more it means he is moved. Really? Should we do the same when we break through next time? Then our figures should be different, so Master will feel refreshed." Upon hearing their telepathic exchange, Guan sighed inwardly. What kind of person do they take me for? Guan couldn't understand them, including Xianxia, who were always coveting his body. Even his junior sister did the same, but he could understand her. After all, they were childhood sweethearts who had come this far together from the mortal world. Their affection naturally developed. Each harboring their thoughts, they waited for Xianxia to stabilize her cultivation level. It was also with Guan's help that Xianxia managed to break through so quickly. Normally, crossing tribulation taking several days wasn't unusual. They waited until dusk before Xianxia finally stabilized her aura. She stood up, wrapped in a loose white robe, and flung herself at Guan, who, upon being hugged by her, could feel her body. "All right, from now on you are also a Nirvana Realm powerhouse. Try to keep some dignity," Guan said sternly. Xianxia looked up, giggling, I just want to be like this, even if it means hanging on to my master forever. I am willing." "Hanging on forever? Aren't you tired?" Guan shook his head with a smile. Xianxia blinked and asked, "What about trying for 100 years? 100 years? Guan's face twitched, and he immediately pushed her away. Tianqing and Tianbai came over and asked her how she felt now. Xianxia was very excited and began talking about the transformations of the Nirvana realm. Tianqing and Tianbai listened attentively, while Guan, not in a hurry to get back, continued to eliminate demons. During this half-day period, the lifespan he had harvested had almost reached 1 billion years. If he had to cultivate by conventional methods, it would take hundreds of years. With Guan operating covertly, The Sky Demon Great Sect was temporarily unable to overturn the world, and the slaughter methods of demon god Xianxia, in order to preserve heaven and earth, were not too wild. As night fell, after sending Tian Yaoer and the two women back to the outer world cave, Guan finally returned to the third Medicine Valley. Before going upstairs, he sensed Ji Xiaoyu's presence. Ji Xiaoyu's cultivation level had already climbed to the Immortal Path realm, and the power accumulated in the primordial Taoist talisman could burst forth at any moment. He did not linger, but went straight upstairs and into the house, sat down at the desk, and picked up a book to read. Having eradicated many heavenly demons and saved many mortal spirits today, he felt content and thus was in the mood to read. 30 minutes later, footsteps came from outside the door. Guan waved his hand, and the door opened, with Ji Xiaoyu walking in. She stood at the doorway, without moonlight shining on her, appearing like a shadow. Guan looked up at her and asked, "Are you ready?" Ji Xiaoyu's face was calm as she said, "The battle with the Sky Demon Emperor is a promise between him and me. I must defeat him to overcome the demons of defeat in my heart. But you are bound by the rules of reincarnation. You couldn't possibly be his match," Guan asked, feigning concern. He began calculating Ji Xiaoyu's fate. Indeed, the future had changed again. The red dust immortal emperor? Or perhaps the reincarnator that hides within the mortal world? No matter who it is, do you truly intend to withstand a grand heavenly might? The voice of the annihilation god emperor rose again, and as his words ended, 120 demon gods, Xianhuang, unleashed devastating auras, shattering their continent, stirring up oceans into colossal waves that soared into the sky. The overwhelming pressure caused even the free immortals to fall, including Ji Xiaoyu. Although Ji Xiaoyu wore a mask, concealing her eyes from her clenched jaw, it was clear she was unable to resist. Outside the attic, thousands of disciples who had been closely watching saw Gu and transform into light and leave, leaving them all stunned in place. They instinctively looked up. A hole appeared in the sea of dark clouds engulfing the sky, and sunlight poured down from there. Under the mystic pure tree, an Xian looked up at the cloud hole in the sky, feeling infinite admiration rising within her. "Master, is this the moment you spoke of, turning the tide?" Guan had taught her more than once to concentrate on cultivating, as the significance of diligent cultivation was to turn the tide when faced with crises others couldn't handle. The rewards in that moment would exceed being powerful itself. Before, an Xian did not understand what gains would helping others bring. But now she understood. The ultimate mixed yuan wheel seemed to hitch for a moment, then shattered the Tao Gate, hovering behind the annihilation god emperor. The boundless cosmic void revealed a massive trail of energy that could not be seen to its ends, rapidly expanding as though a flood was laid across the cosmos. And Guin and the annihilation god emperor were precisely in the midst of this torrential flow. It deserves to be mentioned that the Annihilation God Emperor did not bear any animosity towards Guin, which made him even more cautious. He turned around, looking towards the direction of the great heavenly spirit land. Countless heavenly demons watched the ultimate chaos disk with wide eyes, all terrified. When the Annihilation God Emperor revealed his Tao Gate earlier, it was shocking enough, but they never expected that Sword Venerable Fudao would break his gate and destroy his body in one move. The stronger the demeanor the Annihilation God Emperor displayed, the more intense the shock Sword Venerable Fudao brought by killing him in an instant. On the side of the heavenly demons, all of them lost the will to fight, even forgetting to flee. It wasn't until Gu N's figure appeared within that golden light, heading back, that the heavenly demons snapped out of it and started to scatter. Guin did not pursue the fleeing demons. After all, they were living beings too. Excessive killing might attract major trouble. Moreover, he was now portraying himself as a reclusive great power. He had acted previously because he could not bear to see other beings suffer. If he were to massacre the heavenly demons indiscriminately, the nature of his actions would fundamentally change. He did not wish to reveal the slightest clue about the evolution of lifespan, especially now that he was being watched by the Annihilation God Emperor. The Annihilation God Emperor might have sensed the ability of Long Zhan to take lifespans, so he continually chose descendants of the Long family to reincarnate. As Guin walked within the golden light, ignoring the heavenly demons fleeing in disarray like a flurry of blossoms, he pondered on his own. He raised his eyes towards the great heavenly spirit land, deducing its cause and effect. After this battle, the heavenly demon retreated, the Xianxia divine dynasty dissolved, and great heaven and earth once again became a scene of struggle for supremacy between the immortal dynasty and the holy court. But before the purge of all beings, the timeline was stretched long. Although an ultimate catastrophe would eventually cause the obliteration of all beings and the rebirth of heaven and earth, at least during this period, generation after generation of beings could live out their lives. For mortals, 1,000 years were out of reach. For most demon creatures, 10,000 years were equally unattainable. For the beings before the old and new transitions of heaven and earth, Guin was the savior. And after the rebirth of heaven and earth, not all beings would die. Ultimately, a few would survive. When the new beginning started, they would become the trailblazers of the new epoch with their own Tao level, becoming the immortals in the hearts of the countless beings.